mahalaga talaga ang pag-attend ng flag ceremony sapagkat ito ang magsisilbing tagapagmulat sa isang tao bilang Pilipino na hindi madali na makamtan natin yung ating kalayaan as simbolo ng ating bandila.
Ang islap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagsiriging. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang may di masidilim.
Sa sobrang dami po ng estudyante, hindi po lahat nakakover sa area po kasi maliit lang po yung space namin before.
Ang ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Ang pagiging isang mabuting anak ay natututunan natin sa ating tahanan. At ang ating pagiging isang mabuting mamamayang Pilipino ay nag-uugat sa ating mga paaralan. 2 buwan makalipas ang school turnover sa DepEd ng Taganito National High School, ating kamustahin ang lagay ng mga beneficiaries ng paaralan, ang mismong mga mag-aaral nito.
Ngayon po, mas maliwalas po siya, tapos mas plaster siya diri sa compared lagi sa una.
Good morning and mabuhay, Mr. Ras.
Masarap na po mag-aral sa bago naming classrooms ngayon dahil nga po sa isang silid-aralan po ay hindi na po kami gaano nagsisiksikan. At saka po, kompleto na po lahat ng mga gamit sa aming paaralan. Kagaya lamang po sa mga reportings, meron na po kaming mga projectors, mga teachers po nagpapagamit na po ng laptops, at saka sabi niya po na yung mainit, hindi na po kasi mainit kasi nga gaya ngayon sa isang silid-aralan, less 40 students na lang po yung pasok doon. So, hindi na po siya gaanong crowded. So, nasa estudyante na lang po yan kung paano nila pinapahalagahan ang mga gamit na binibigay sa amin po.
Mas ngayon kasi hindi na nagkokopyahan dahil ang lawak na, tapos pag mag-i-exam talagang malaki na ang space.
Epektibo po yung pagtuturo ngayon ng mga teachers sapagkat noon, ang paaralan namin ay blackboard lang yung nagpagitan ng ibang mga estudyante. Kaya rinig na rinig namin yung klase ng ibang section or ibang classroom. So hindi kami makapag-focus.
Hindi na masyadong nakaka-high blood yung mga guro na magtuturo sa amin kasi hindi na masyadong maingay kasi sapagkat maluwag na at saka may kanya-kanya na kaming silid-aralan dito sa school.
Education is the only thing that we have that nobody can take away from us. Kaya naman mga proyekto sa edukasyon ang mga pangunahing prioridad sa corporate social responsibility ng Nickel Asia Corporation bilang halimbawa na responsableng pagmimina. Dahil sa mga paaralan na uhubog ang mga pag-iisip ng mga pag-asa ng ating bayan, ang kabataang Pilipino.
Salamat ka, Radyo, sa bago namong eskwelahan, TH5 o Taganito Mining Corporation.
Let's start with, it's just fitting to start with, okay. Yung mga interferences po, konti, no? Yung baka nakatutok yung electric fan, kung ano man, para mabawasan yung noise. It's just fitting to start the activity with a prayer. Let's put ourselves in the presence of God. Almighty Father, we thank you for having gathered us today. We invoke your name for healing for this country, for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our families, for our neighbors, for our partners, funders, for our workmates. Lord, we thank you. We couldn't thank you enough for making us alive until today. We implore that you bless us with your healing powers every day so that we stay away from the malady. Lord, bless us so that we continue to do our work better, so that we continue to do and serve our country better. With this, we ask to the Almighty Father. Amen. In Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, kaway-kaway po. Siguro we start with a picture. Hi, Sir Gary. Let's have a quick picture photo opportunity habang kompleto pa tayo. Very quick lang po, please.
Standby po, standby.
Wear your smiles. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Nagpapasalamat po kami sa Nickel Asia Corporation for really supporting this project. Ito po yung outside of our regular programming. Pero naisipan namin ng PPI na to respond to any, not only controversial, but I think something to, pakiano lang po, turn off po yung just a polite reminder, bawasan po yung interference, okay, please. We just thought that we have to respond to not only the clamor but the demand of the public to really to discuss things na hindi lang amongst ourselves pero engage yung publiko. And we couldn't thank enough our resource persons today who will be properly introduced by my co-host and moderator, si Joyce mamaya. But to officially open our program, I'd like to give to you our indefatigable chairman, president of the Philippine Press Institute, also a publisher of Middle East Standard. Please welcome Sir Rolly Estabillo. Hi, Sir Rolly.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone.
Good afternoon. I give the floor to you, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to this PPI webinar. This is quite fantastic, putting this up all together under the pandemic. And right now, I think we have more than 1,000 participants. That's really overwhelming. That means the idea of this seminar is really more than just journalist concern.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to thank our sponsor, Nickel Asia Corporation, of course, our Vice President for Corporate Communication of Nickel Asia, Mr. J.B. Bailon, and our distinguished panelists, who will be properly introduced by our host, Ms. Joyce Pañares, and all participants. We welcome you to this webinar. You know, this comes very timely because with the new communications rule that we are now under, it behooves for us to be more careful in how we do ask questions when we do interviews. This is not only for journalists, but for everyone. When you ask questions, sometimes we blurt out anything just to say something. It's sometimes also, even the jaded journalist, the question that they ask is simply not questionable. It's the way they ask it. So you have to rephrase and study well how you gonna ask questions to a particular interviewee. It's not very easy. I've been there, and many of us have been there, but still we cannot avoid mistakes. So the rule that I may impart is that be prepared, do your homework before you face your camera. This is in particular to those who face the camera, because the internet and the social media is unforgiving. Any misstep in asking question on real time, he'll get the hell out of it. So the best thing that I can say is that you be prepared, ask questions, have it reviewed by another person, and then rephrase, if you have to rephrase, your questions. That's it. There is no substitute to your doing your homework before you face the camera, or even when you interview without the camera. So you have to be very careful in how you phrase your question. I know how this webinar came about. I know what triggered this. But then again, I'm not defending the reporter, the interviewer, but her question, as I've said, is not questionable. It's the way she asked it. So it's very important really that we know exactly whom we are interviewing. Don't ask stupid questions. Don't ask obvious questions. Just to ask questions. So when you ask questions, you must be asking relevant questions, and that you must be conscious of your interviewee. It's not just you. It's the show of the interviewee. It's not the interviewer, like us, reporters, merely report and solicit information to from our interviewee. So more or less, this is the substance of this webinar. I hope the young ones who are still out there trying to make a grade to be a journalist, whatever, communicators, this is good for you as a class to learn from. So I'd leave it at that. And I'd like to, before I go, I'd like to thank, this is a reminder from my executive director, I should promote the News Commons, the PPI News Commons. This is very important, I think, especially for those who are part of PPI. Please share your stories. The News Commons is for us, for everyone who cares to know about what's going on in the communities. This is not the main papers. These are the papers that really do know what's going on down there. So PPI has these news commons that can provide all the information and give you a good perspective of what's going around in the country. These are the community papers. Now, we will expand this later, not only newspapers, but as Ariel has said, we have to expand it even to non-newspapers. So in other words, those who are doing online, but part of a new media, we'll have to include them to make these news commons more relevant to this time. So watch it, judge it, but I assure you, you'll find good information there. This is really free for us. We provide information. All those who you see there are part of PPI, and they contribute their news for free. So anyway, I think I have said so much already. I left it at that, and thank you very much. And I hope you will have a more productive and responsive webinar. Thank you very much. Take it away.
Thanks very much, Sir Rolly, Chairman of the PPI, and also publisher of Manila Standard. Thank you for setting the tone of the seminar of this online forum. And also promoting the PPI News Commons is www.ppinewscommons.net. All information about any news about the pandemic as written and reported by our community journalists. At this point, having acknowledged Nickel Asia Corporation as a principal partner for this program this afternoon, let's call the Vice President of Corporate Communications of NAC, also a political commentator and columnist of Malaya. Please welcome Sir JB Bailon. Hi, sir.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon.
Thank
Good
you again,
afternoon.
and good afternoon to all our friends at PPI, and especially to the young ones of my generation who are part of this seminar. It's so nice to see young faces sa participants. I hope this will just be the start of your regular attendance for all PPI events. No? I'm happy about this one because it's relevant as most of the or all of the events of PPR, but this is especially relevant. However, I was bothered by I'm looking at it now, the warning, not for the faint of heart. So I was tempted to take an extra dose of my BP medicine. Unfortunately, I have a 1:30 Zoom, so I will miss all the blood pressure raising forum. No? But anyway, it also describes this forum as for students, educators, ML teachers, non-media, and journalists. In effect, this forum is for citizens.
Yeah.
Citizens not only of the Philippines, but actually of any country who claim that they live in a democracy or hope to live in a democracy. Now, some Filipinos will claim we're of the first one, that we live in a democracy, but others will claim we're of the second one, that we hope to live in a democracy. And actually, there's a relationship between the two. No? A democracy is strengthened when a citizenry strives to be informed.
True.
And I use the word strives because being informed requires work. Hindi po ito osmosis na itatapat mo lang yung dyaryo sa mukha mo
Agree.
and magsisip in na yung information through your epidermis to your cerebrum. Because we know that some people don't even have cerebrum. Let's not mention names. No? So citizenry to be informed requires work. It requires reading, watching, listening. But more than that, it requires that people ask questions. Now, I think growing up, I'm nearing my second citizenship. I have realized that Filipinos are wary of asking questions. And usually there are two reasons. One, they don't want to look stupid. Because they think, if I ask the question, baka sabihin, hindi mo alam yan, parang tanga-tanga mo. The second one is they don't want to embarrass or anger the person they will ask a question of. Now, on the first part, if you don't ask a question and enlighten you on something you are not so sure of because you don't want to look stupid, well, you will be stupid because you will remain unenlightened. And therefore, to the point of Sir Rolly, actually, the stupidest question is the question you did not ask. It is the matter of, as he said, how you ask the question. And going to the second point that you might offend the person you're asking the question of, it is in the manner, as Sir Rolly said, of asking the question. There are very many nice ways of asking questions that do not offend. Like you can just say, excuse me po, corrupt po ba kayo? Oh, that's a very nice way of asking it, di ba? So, again, so it is how you ask the question and not what the question is. Now, if he gets offended, that's his problem. Now, looking at the lineup of panelists, these are people I do not wish to be at the receiving end of questions. And therefore, I congratulate the PPI for putting up such a list of panelists. I'm so excited that there are more than 10,000 people who are trying to get in, but due to social distancing cannot be accommodated. There are almost 500 participants in this chat room alone, most of whom are my age and younger. And therefore, again, congratulations, Ariel. You know that Nicolasia will always be behind programs like this, always be behind programs which raise the educational or the level of information that our citizenry has. So while I cannot stay longer than 1:30 because I have to earn my salary with another Zoom, I am so happy about this. Keep it up. Mabuhay ang PPI, mabuhay ang Pilipinas.
Mabuhay kayo, Sir JB and Nickel Asia Corporation as well. And congratulations to your activity which you organized this morning. Maraming salamat po for joining us this afternoon. Malaking bagay po ang tulong ni Nickel Asia Corporation na katulad nila. Merong malasakit sa media and also championing causes and issues na pinaglalaban din ng PPI. We could not thank you enough. Just a quick reminder because I always fail to introduce myself. Now for the first time, meron po akong reminder to myself. Let me just introduce myself. My name is Ariel C. Sabellino. I'm the Executive Director and Trustee of the Philippine Press Institute. It's good to see you, all of you today, and also it's good to serve you. Wag na natin po patagalin kasi nga we haven't even started yet pero very provocative na yung binanggit ng chairman namin sa PPI tsaka ng aming program partner, si Sir JB sa Nickel Asia Corporation. Joyce, wag natin patagalin. Let me just introduce Joyce, my co-host and co-moderator today. Hindi po ako mag-isa but mostly will be moderated by Joy. Please welcome the news editor, a journalism educator, also a lecturer. Please welcome Joyce Pañares. Hi Joyce, kumusta na?
Ariel, maayos naman. Magandang hapon sa lahat ng mga kasama natin ngayon. I think before we start, we'll have some gentle reminders lang for everyone. Lalo't higit sa mga panelists natin. Una, this is a self-criticism na klase ng webinar. But we do not encourage profanities or cuss words. Bawal magmura po dito. Kung magkainitan mamaya at gusto po ninyong murahin yung gusto nyong murahin, pakitext na lang po, direct message dun sa tao. Pero wag po habang ongoing ang webinar. Let's have a healthy, kidding aside, this is a healthy discussion. We actually welcome this kind of dialogue because, it's, as you said, introspection ito sa parte natin. Bilang mga journalists, we are not infallible. We are always out to improve ourselves. And yun. And what better way to do it than to talk about this? Kung walang pandemic, this would have been what kind of setup? Nasa coffee shop or
nasa hotel.
O baka nagiinuman tayo ng konti, may pizza.
Correct.
And we'll be talking among ourselves. But
tsaka Joyce, maganda yung binanggit mo na not only a reminder to our panelists but I think to our audience in general. If they comment on the chat room and on the live streaming comments there, kailangan din natin na mas because we're offering them a decent conversation engagement. So kailangan insightful, pwedeng magtanong, wala namang masamang magtanong, di ba? Just a quick reminder also that this journalism 101, asking or not asking the questions as we frame it as a title, hindi lang natin pag-uusapan yung that one particular incident, but I think you mentioned about introspection. It's about journalism in general. It's just a trigger, di ba kanina off-cam, sabi natin, maganda to remind ourselves that it's about time to engage the public para pag nag-uusap tayo ng gitnang usapin, hindi natin nililimitahan yung space para sa atin lang, pero yung publiko na andyan ngayon nakamasid, na magtatanong at makikinig at mag-engage at magpa-participate sa isang malaking usapin na to at isang significant na conversation, I must say. Yung interaction is what we're after. And that maganda binanggit ni Carlos Conde, Caloy Conde kanina sa GC na I think PPI aims to really send a message across na what we're after is that really responsible ethical journalism that involves the public, na hindi lang yung tayo na nag-usap. Having said that, Joyce, I think it's about time for you to introduce them to our audiences plural kasi meron tayo sa meeting room tsaka sa Facebook live streaming din. Yeah, take it away.
Sige. So tayo po we will be joined by 6 veteran media practitioners today as our panelists. I'll start with Ms. Amalia Bandola Cabusao. She's the veteran editor-in-chief of Mindanao Times and vice chairperson of the Philippine Press Institute. Miss Amy, if you're there, kaway lang po para makita po ng lahat ng ating mga nanonood.
Hello.
Hi ma'am, good afternoon po. We also have with us the Philippine Daily Inquirer columnist and Ateneo Asian Center for Journalism Chair, Mr. John Neri. Sir John?
Hi Joyce, good afternoon everyone.
Good afternoon, sir. We also have Mr. Carlos Conde, Senior Researcher at the Asia Division of Human Rights Watch and a former freelance correspondent of the New York Times. Sir Caloy?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon po. We have Ms. Rides Barsha, Manila Times and Rappler correspondent and UN Journalism Fellow. Rides?
Since your rides.
Or baka hahabol pa lang sa rides. Baka she's still caught in, And we have with us an associate professor at the University of the Philippines and columnist of Pinoy Weekly and a member of the editorial board of Bulatlat.com. Professor ko to, Professor Danny Araw.
Yay.
Hi, Sir Danny.
Hi. Good afternoon to all of you. Hello.
Magandang hapon po, sir. And last but not the least, the Pulitzer Prize winner and editor-at-large of the news website press1.ph, Mr. Manny Mugato. Hi, Manny.
Hello. Ayan, umpisa na natin ang balitaktakan. Manny,
Okay.
kaway-kaway.
Oo nga, kaway muna, Sir Manny, para makita po ng lahat.
Siguro, Josh, at this point, polite reminder lang for, especially for the participants to please mute yourselves kasi we're about to start the discussion. Mas maiging naririnig natin ng maayos, ng mabuti yung diskusyon ngayon sa meeting room tsaka sa mga nanonood. Ayun. Joy.
Bago natin simulan, meron lang dalawang request tayo. Una, kung meron pong tanong, please feel free to enter your questions dun sa chat box natin. Or if you're listening via FB Live, sa comment section ng ating live streaming, pwede rin po kayo mag-post ng question. Please use the hashtag PPI Journalism 101. And ano pa ba? Yun lang. Kier, I'd like to ask you to flash the controversial question that was raised that triggered all of this discussion.
True. So,
yeah, just to explain a little, the reason why I am asking Kier to flash the entire question, emphasis on entire, because some of the memes that came out on Facebook, putol po yung question ni Tina.
Spliced up talaga. Intentional yung iba eh.
Maybe intentional, maybe not intentional, pero putol. Huminto doon sa until now. At nawala din yung unang parte na just to set the record straight, etc., etc. Ang nakita na lang sa FB, yung sa ibang post yung meron ka nga bang links to communist group until now. Pero actually yan po yung buong tanong ni Tina. And on that note, we'd like to throw questions to our panelists. Ano po ba ang naging tingin ninyo dito? Meron po, or baka may opening statements ang ating mga panelists?
Let's have an opening statement from each of the panelists to set the tone of the discussion. So we'll start with kanino, Joyce? Prof. Dan.
Sige, we'll start with Professor Danny Araw.
Yes, hi Sir Dan.
Yeah, good afternoon to all of you. I don't really have a prepared statement because I understand that we have just simply a question and answer type of forum. But if you want me to speak a little, basically the questions that should be asked would be probing, exploratory, and engaged in truth-telling. So as correctly mentioned by the previous speaker a while ago, the questions should be research-based and there should be a mix between open-ended and closed-ended questions. Perhaps later on we can talk about the nuances of that particular question, but I don't want to jump to conclusions here and to preempt the discussion. I would beg to differ from the assertion a while ago that there was nothing wrong with the question. There is a lot of wrong there because it works on the assumption that a lie, which happens to be links to communist movements, would be accepted as fact, albeit implicitly. So perhaps later on we can discuss that in detail, keeping in mind the normative standards of journalism. Yun lang po, we have to give the floor to others. Salamat po.
Sure, Prof. Dan. Thanks so much. John, Neri, Joyce?
Yeah, maybe Sir John would
Sir John, okay.
Thanks, Danny. Sir Rolly and JB asked us to be provocative, so I will start by pushing back against an assumption that they both held, which is that it is the job of journalists to be nice and ask nice questions. I think we are sending the wrong message. This is not to say that the way the question of our colleague, Tina Panganiban Perez, was phrased in the right way. It could have been phrased better. But I want to push back against this idea that we don't want to hurt the feelings of the people we cover. I think aside from being prepared, we need to also have a very good understanding of the power dynamics. In the face of bullshit, it is not our responsibility to be nice. We need to push back. In the face of vulnerability, it is not our job to add to the sum of injustice. So we need to be sensitive to the occasion. And I would just like to add one more parameter, so to speak, and then maybe later on we can talk about this. There is also a difference between asking questions in a public forum and asking questions privately. I mean, those of us who've had many interviews, who've conducted many interviews, know that we ask questions differently, different people. But somehow when it's in public, we need to be mindful of how the public sees this because it has a reflection on our profession as journalists. But I also want to maybe later on discuss exactly how a public format should affect the way we ask questions. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Sir John. How about maybe we can call Miss Amy? From the perspective of a community journalist, ma'am, ano pong masasabi niyo, ma'am?
Yeah, I totally agree with Sir John and what Sir Danny said about how we should look at the questions, how we should frame our questions. But I would like to think that this is not the first time that it happened. I mean, I think most of us agree that we did somehow put our foot in our mouth one way or another. But if you look at the situation right now, I mean, that's different. That's a total game changer. And I think maybe the pressure, just to add to what they said, I think maybe one thing here is that maybe the pressure of the 24/7 news and how we now conduct our stories with the situation that we're in, that most of us are working from home, and it's very difficult for us to get our stories. And for instance, the newsroom, we still have to beat a number of stories each day. So I think that we should also think of that as one of the factors. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Amy. Oo nga, no? Because the pandemic also changed the dynamics ng ating newsroom at pagtatanong. Actually, ngayon pag hindi gusto yung tanong mo, pwede kang i-mute. Hindi ka tawagin habang naka-zoom kayo, no?
Always.
True.
Oo, napakadali ngayon. Unlike dati na kung face-to-face na, madali mo ring sigawan pabalik yung source na siguro nagsisinungaling sa harapan mo.
Enabic mo naman yan, ng minumute.
Sir Kaloy, paano kayo na-biktima niyan?
Hindi ako, ibang journalist.
Ibang journalist. Madami, di ba Joyce? Madami. Pag ayaw
madami.
Ayaw yung tanong. Or ayaw yung pagbubukha, di ba Kaloy? Pag alam na, ay markado ka na, wag na yan. Mute na yan.
Sir Kaloy, ikaw na sunod para may kwento mo.
Ikaw na, Kaloy.
Yeah, sige, unang-una salamat. This is a very important forum and I think given yung makeup ng mga nag-a-attend it's going to be very helpful to a lot of future journalists. Ang gusto ko lang sana i-disabuse yung pananaw ng iba natin sa kaibigan at kasama sa media na tungkol dito sa pagtatanong. Of course, journalists should ask questions, especially tough questions. Our society would be poorer if they didn't. So nobody is telling, let alone me or the other who criticized that episode, nobody is telling journalists not to ask questions. And also, it's sad that during this whole hula-baloo, merong mga lumalabas sa social media na pinatatahimik na lang itong mga journalist daw, wag na mag-interview. Mali din naman yun. Again, may paraan ng pagtatanong, may mga tanong na dapat itanong, may paraan ng maayos sa pagtatanong, and we will expound this later. But my final point really is, and this is at the crux of my position sa issue na to, na nalaman na sa social media and all at nakasakit ng damdamin ng ibang mga kaibigan, is that ang pagtatanong ay maikaakibat yan na dapat alam mo kung ano yung basis ng tinatanong mo. Dapat alam mo yung context as history ng subject na tinatanong mo. At dahil kung alam mo ang history at context ng red baiting, ng McCarthyism, hindi mo dapat itanong ng ganon. Dapat may hindi lang pagiging delicate but kundi pagiging intelligenteng pagtatanong. Ang pagtatanong na mas nakaka-elicit ng maayos na response kaysa maging incendiary. So, marami pa tayong pag-uusapan mamaya pero yun lang ang punto ko.
This is really getting very interesting, Joyce, kasi later on nga, binanggit ka ni Kaloy kanina, I don't know if, kasi mga estudyante hindi naman nakita, actually Kaloy offered an alternative to phrasing the question, which probably he can share mamaya, habang pinalawig na yung usapin. Next, Joyce.
Next, I think I'd like to call Rides. Andito na si Rides, nakapasok na siya sa ating webinar. And then after Rides, we'll go to Manny.
Yeah. Rides? Medyo crappy lang yata yung connection ni Rides. although she is in the meeting room already. Rights, by the way, is based in Legazpi.
Yeah.
Oh, correct.
I think she said she's gonna wear a face mask dahil naka-quarantine yata siya but still working. While waiting for rides, maybe Manny, could you go first?
Okay, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Nagpapasalamat ako at ako ay naimbitahan nyo rito maski hindi karapat-dapat kasi mas magaling si Sir Rolly at yung idol ko si John Neri at si Kaloy, no? Alam nyo, yung tanong ni Tina, eye-opener yan sa ating mga journalist, no? Dapat matuto tayo doon sa pagkakamali, no? I think the question is legitimate dahil nagpatawag si Patring ng presscon para i-straighten out yung akusasyon laban sa ginagawa niyang proyekto, no? Pero mali naman yung pagkakatanong sa kanya dahil masyadong direct, no? Tsaka parang sinasabi mong komunista ka ba? Parang hindi mo siguro tama yung ganong pagkatanong, ano? I think journalists are trained to ask the questions properly, mga open-ended, hindi yung direct question na yes or no, no? Although yung tanong na yes or no, may gamit din. Pero hindi ganong ginagamit yan. Kasi kung gusto mong mag-elicit ng sagot na maganda yung quotes na makuha mo, dapat open-ended. Dapat siguro why o how o bakit, no? Yun dapat tinatanong natin. At isa pa, ang mga journalists mayroong tinusunod na ethics sa journalism. Dapat natin tandaan na ang ethics na to hindi lamang doon sa pagsusulat natin, no, ng balita o nung anumang storya, pero pati sa pagtatanong meron din tayong ethics, no? Dapat pag-aralan natin maigi ang isang subject o isang tao, alamin natin ang background, alamin natin lahat ang konteksto para matanong natin ng maigi. Kasi alam mo, sa ngayon, masyado nang malupit ang social media. Tayo mga journalist nasa microscope. Talagang konting pagkamali lang, talagang pinuputak tayo ng batikos, no? At ako'y nalulungkot dahil dito sa ating pagkakamali, nawawala ang ating credibility. Nawawala ang public trust sa ating mga journalist. At nakakalungkot dahil sa panahong ito na usong-uso ang disinformation at propaganda, talagang may sira ang ating propesyon, no? Last year nga, merong survey yung Oxford Institute, Reuters Institute, na sinasabing ang public trust sa Philippine media nasa 27%. Ito ay mas mababa pa sa global average sa 38%. Pero gusto ko sanang balikan yung panahon na tayong mga reporter, tayong mga journalist, ang pangunahing source ng information na bawat sinasabi natin, pininiwalaan, no, ng mga tao. Ngayon, mas naniniwala na ang mga tao sa social media, sa Facebook, sa Twitter, at kung saan platform pa. So, sana may maging lesson sa atin to ng mga journalists upang pagbutihin ang ating trabaho. Yan po.
Thank you, Manny. I think maganda rin yung binansion mo na parang iba rin kasi yung setting natin ngayon, ano, with social media and all. Dati kung magkamali yung dyaryo, halimbawa, magsulat ka letter to the editor. Ngayon, kakatanong mo pa lang, wala pa nga yung mismong storya. Ang bilis ng reaction sa social media. Plus, you have what you call cancel culture din minsan, ano, sa SOCMED. Now, we'd like to hear from Rides. Rides, finally.
Ayun na. Kitang-kita na si Rides.
Pa-unmute lang, mamu.
Ayan.
Hello.
Okay. Opening statement, Rides.
Yeah, good afternoon. hinggil po dun sa sa katanungan ni Tina. Para sa akin, as community journalist, valid yung question ni Tina. Only that, siguro, yung para sa akin, kung sa part ko siguro tatanungin ko, yung naging kukunin ko yung reaction ni Non, kung ano yung masasabi niya dun sa rig tagging. Kasi we need to ask we want to know the elephant in the room by asking a solid question. Kasi kung hindi natin yung itatanong, meron kasing paraan na pagtatanong na pwede mo siyang makuha na hindi makaka-offend sa tao kahit gaano pa kabigat yung tanong sa ini-interview natin.
Thank you, Reds. Ariel, would you like to
Joyce,
throw the first question?
Yeah, please indulge me with the first question. This is not from me, but actually a question called, one of the few questions called even before this activity this afternoon. This is for Prof. Dan and John Neri. Basic sa tingin ito, basic tong tanong nito, talagang ito yung one question percolating in their minds eh. Ano ba talaga ang mali, Prof. Dan and Sir John? May mali ba talaga? Prof. Dan?
Okay, if you want to refer to the question itself, may mali talaga if we want to look at the factual and contextual accuracy of the question itself. Because the day before, or actually if you want to go back to 2 days before that actual press conference, there was no direct accusation against Ms. Non with regard to red tagging. And the only accusation that was present would be coming from anonymous trolls. So make no mistake about it, we looked at the data from the QCTV and the NTF-ELTA. The one that was red tagged was the Maginhawa Community Pantry, not Ms. Non herself. So let's make a distinction between the two. Now the question pertains to mayroon ka bang links sa communist movement until now or nagkaroon ba? So that particular question alone would tend to sometimes make people feel that the question emanates from certain anonymous trolls, which we should not dignify in the first place. So it's good that Moggs and our other colleagues talked about fake news, because that particular incident of red tagging, just like other cases of red tagging, would be products of fake news because there's no substantiation that's given. Now, ang tamang phrasing dapat, at dito papasok yung kahalagahan ng pananaliksik, kukunin mo yung ebidensya kung meron man tungkol sa red tagging kay Patreng, tapos yun yung sasabihin mo, Ms. Non, this is the evidence that was leveled against you, how would you react to it? Ano po ba ang pagtingin ninyo dito sa ebidensyang to? Pero when you turn the tables and say may links ka ba, tapos may follow-up ka pa, ano bang basis nitong red tagging sa'yo, even the last part of the question is more problematic because it's bordering on speculation. Na sa tingin ko, hindi siya magagamit sa storya kasi sa konteksto ng truth-telling, hindi naman speculative dapat yung mga pinapresent natin sa audience, kundi yung katotohanan talaga. Kaya masasabi natin na in the first place, walang batayan yung ganong klaseng tanong. Pero we have to make a distinction, okay, before we turn over to John, between the question and the topic. The question may not be valid or legitimate, but the topic of red tagging is worth being part of the news cycle. Yun lang po.
Okay, Sir Dan. Later on, let's delve into it more. Sir John, yes, from your point of view.
Yes, thanks. I agree with Professor Danny about the question. It could have been phrased differently. For me, the thing wrong with the question was the maybe intellectually less rigorous way of asking hanggang ngayon, no? Which assumes that there was a previous connection. In fact, I did see a lot of people pounce on that on social media and saying, anong ibig sabihin nito? But I'm actually glad that Danny now says that it's a legitimate topic. If it's a legitimate topic, then the question about red tagging should be asked. Again, as Manny Mogato already pointed out, Patreng called for the press conference, especially because they had been red tagged. Does not mean that because she herself had not been at that point specifically linked, that as journalists we limit ourselves to that. No, I think that we should explore the possibility. But again, the way it was asked, maganda nga sana, no, kung sabihin, there is no evidence against you. What do you say to this? Kaysa, do you have links up to now? Which, if you were just scrolling through your timeline, wala ka masyadong oras, isip mo, baka naman talaga meron siya, di ba? No? So I think in this particular case, we need to be sensitive to the vulnerability of the subject. No? That precisely because she's been red tagged, they stopped operations of the community pantry in Mahiwaga for at least a day. And we know there are serious consequences, sometimes deadly consequences for red tagging in the Philippines. So my question is, I'm not sure if even my way of phrasing it is the right way, but my real concern is how do we give the subject the opportunity to deny categorically what she has been directly or indirectly accused of. So parang yun yung if I were in the newsroom, that's also what I would advise the reporter. Give her the opportunity to deny it. And because it's TV, mas maganda kung yung denial, categorical, makukuha mo as a soundbite. But anyway, just to get back to that point, the question really was, sa tingin ko, I don't know Ana Patricia noon, sa tingin ko, nung sinabi niya na ang dumi ng tanong niyo, he was referring to that particular point. No? Meron ka pa bang links hanggang ngayon or ever nagkaroon? No? So parang, ano bang tawag dyan sa logical fallacy? No? I think she reacted to that. It's important for us to understand that Tina Pangiliban Perez was one of the very first to report on this, and that on the pantry, and that AP noon has been very emphatic about the role that GMA news reporting has played in spreading the word about the community pantries. That's why later on she defended Tina. Pero it cannot be denied na sinabi niya ang dumi ng dumi. So tingin ko yun yung dumi. So yun yung mali.
Sir Dan. Thanks, Sir Jan. Sir, Prof. Dan, balikan ko lang binanggit ni Janery kanina yung sinagot nung ni Patreng na madumi yung tanong. Ano ibig sabihin nun? Para ma-put into context lang at alam ng publiko natin na gano'n yung sagot niya. In the first place, siya naman nagpatawag ng presser.
Yeah, that's a good point. In order to denounce the red tagging, not necessarily of herself, but of the pantry. Because as I noted a while ago, UCPD and NTF-LCAC shared certain posts, leveling malice against the setting up of the pantry. But it wasn't, at that time, it wasn't personal against none. The red tagging of Parlade and Badoy came much later after the press con. Okay, so let's be clear with that. Now, when I said that as a topic, red tagging may be part of the news cycle, it doesn't mean that we will dignify the fake news peddlers. And actually, John makes a good point that we should be giving the platform to the truth tellers, those who are accused, keeping in mind the contextual accuracy of the issue. And what is the contextual accuracy of red tagging? It has something to do with the dangers that go with red tagging, where you might literally be killed. Not just killed, you might be tortured and killed because of simple accusations of red tagging. And of course, let's not forget, the stress on the mental health brought about by gaslighting and all those bashing and trolling. Those facts, those parts should be part of the news cycle. Now, the fact that Tina did very well in terms of covering the Maginhawa Community Pantry, we're not taking it away from her. And in fact, let me put on record that her journalism is still beyond reproach despite this episode. So this is just part of constructive criticism. Now, the last point that I want to stress here is the line, yung maruming tanong, of course, Patreng would be in a better position to answer what is meant by marume. Pero if you go by communication theory, usually ang nagsistick sa mind ng tao, yung huling bahagi na narinig niya. At ano ba yung huling bahagi? Ito yung ano bang basis ng red tagging sa'yo. Kasi for me, of course, tama rin naman si John na yung until now, medyo accusatory yun, di ba? So maybe yun yung maruming part. Pero para sa akin, hindi dapat mawala yung totality, especially the last part na napaka-speculative. Parang ang dating kasi roon, pagka ano bang basis ng red tagging sa'yo, parang ano ba ang kasalanan mo? Or bakit ka ba inakusahan ng ganyan? The burden of proof should be on the accuser, not on the accused. So in that context, hindi ko sinasabing mali si John, pero parang yun yung magandang idagdag dun sa karumihan ng tanong. Yun lang po.
Ariel, if I may?
Yeah. Yes. Who's this? Sir John?
Me.
Okay, go.
Yeah, I agree with Danny's point about but I wanna pick up on something that he said in his first response, no? Yung idea na sabi niya yung audience, no? Is this what we want the audience to expect? And I want to raise that because I want to ask the panelists here, yung press conference ba online? Is that what we mean by journalism? Of course, it's part of the work of journalism.
Okay.
But when you speak to a TV reporter, ano ba ang audience niya? No? I think that before social media, the answer was clear. The audience is the one that consumes the news report as shown on TV. No? So I think now we're grappling, and it's a good thing. I mean, this is part of the reality. We're grappling with the idea that for many people, perhaps they will not make a distinction between the questions that the reporter asks in public and the report that reporter will finally file in the end. No? So parang yung sinasabi ni Danny na expectations. Actually, ang pagkaintindi ko doon, expectations ng online audience following that press conference.
Press conference.
Maybe for some of us, hindi pa tayo handa doon na, hey, judge me by my report, not by the questions I ask. Hindi pa ako tapos yung ganong klaseng thinking. Ano?
Ipa-file pa lang yung report eh.
Maybe something we can discuss. Thank you.
Sir John, sure.
Just because it's related to this. I don't know.
Okay. Hi, Kaloy. Yes, sure.
To speak. Kaloy.
Sure. No, it's okay. Go.
I think it's important to keep in mind why, to me, the question was really offensive. One, the historical context of the question is basically the same as the McCarthyist question in the 50s, which is when they were hunting down communists in the United States. The question was, are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? If you look at the question that Tina asked Patring, it's basically the same question. And in fact, that is just one of the things that I can say why the question is not so much a question, but borders on the accusation. Ito rin yung basis ko for saying na she was basically parroting what Parnady was saying. So I'm now going into the whole red tagging thing because if you're going to ask that question about a red tag individual, alam mo ba kung ano yung history ng red tag? I'm not saying hindi alam ni Tina. And Tina is a good journalist. We know that. She's been in the business for a very long time. But ang sinasabi ko naman, there are times talaga, hindi lahat tayo, nagkakaroon tayo ng mga maling moment na nagtatanong tayo ng mga maling question. But in this context, red tagging is the singular, I would say, biggest issue on human rights in the Philippines next to the extrajudicial killings. A lot of the journalists, dozens of people, activists who have been red tagged have ended up being murdered and killed. So if you are going to throw that question like that, you have to be mindful of this context. Kasi this is not just, hindi lang ito parang nagchichikahan lang tayo. This is a question that has a very, very severe impact on the lives of so many people. Ang dami nang namatay sa red tagging. So, I think ang gusto mo siguro itanong sa akin, paano ba niya dapat sinagot yung question na yan?
Yeah. O paano niya rephrase? Yeah.
O paano ba niya dapat tinanong yung question?
Tinanong. Oo.
Ang punto ko naman, mahirap siyang itanong, mahirap sagutin siguro in one way. But ang masasabi ko lang is that kung nag-research ka about red tagging, siguro ang ginawa mo, you turn the mic on the red tagger, on Parladi, and ask him, why are you making all of these accusations? What is your basis? Why are you exposing all of these people to danger? Because to be honest, Patring noon, she didn't have to explain what she was doing. But Parlade needs to explain what he's doing. And hindi ko man sinasabi na pero yeah, it's it's something that journalists should be mindful about the context of the question.
May tanong lang ako very quickly lang kasi reading the debate that ensued after this incident, may mga journalists din na nag-raise ng ng argument na Tina was actually just giving Patricia the opportunity to deny the accusation. Anong tingin niyo doon? Plus, from our audience, si Romel put there in the chat box na kasi daw problematic din yung follow-up question ni Tina because tinanong pa niya yung sa mom ni Patricia. And then Ares Gutierrez naman raised the possibility, baka daw that's directed. Is raising the kasi posible rin na nung nasa GMA daw kasi siya dati, yun nga, minomonitor din ng editors, producers, reporters, lahat ng mga questions, tapos maraming factors behind a reporter's question. Tapos panghuli na lang, and this can be answered by any of our panelists. So, nag-cover ako ng Malacanang for almost 10 years. Sa 10 taon na yun, ang dami kong narinig na kakaibang mga tanong. Irreverent, disrespectful, bordering on, ginagawa mo ng almost cartoonish character yung source na tinatanong mo. I've had one na dahil hindi sumagot yung source, tinalakan niya at sinabihan niya, nagmuestro pa siya ng ganon, na you talk, that's your job dahil binabayaran ka to talk. There was one reporter who asked the president, how's your sex life? And to which the former president answered, she's getting plenty. So ano ang kaibahan ng mga ganong klaseng tanong? Pinahapyawan niya na to. Anong kaibahan ng mga ganong klaseng tanong sa naging tanong ni Tina kung ang punto lang naman niya ay gusto niyang bigyan ng opportunity si Patricia to be able to deny the accusation na nire-red tag ang pantry nila?
Joyce?
Yes, please, John.
I actually don't want to talk anymore. I want to hear from Ami and Wright.
Yeah.
Let me just give a very quick response to that. No, I think that the context is different and it matters. No, the context in asking questions, even irreverent or almost seditious questions of government officials, is that there is a power difference, right? On the other hand, here the vulnerable is the subject, patring non. No? In other words, we shouldn't treat those who have been victimized, especially by the state machinery, the way that the state itself treated that person. Right? So it may yung unang sagot doon would be, it's a question of power dynamics. Anyway, I'd really like to hear from Manny or Ami.
Thank you, John. Manny or Ami, yes, please.
This is very brief. This is going to be very brief. I concur with the previous speakers on the real issue here is red tagging. And this is in relation to the community pantries because it has mushroomed everywhere. And here in Davao City, we do have community pantries. And one of the biggest one is somewhere in Matina. And we've been hearing, and because of course we hear the story of what happened in Manila, and the one who is also organizing the pantry here in Davao City, the biggest one, I've been hearing also questions if it is true that she is also somehow has connections previously or something like that. So that's really a cause for concern. So but we didn't ask her about that. So anyway, that's it. No, the real issue really is red tagging, and how should we as journalists cover that story if we feel that we have to cover it.
May I just push a little? Sorry, you said you did not ask the organizer ng pantry sa Davao of that accusation. What made you decide na not to ask anymore? Ano yung mga naging considerations?
This is a community. What's this? How do I say? In community, we know each other, especially in a very small community like Davao City. And if you look at our pantry, I mean, it has become very necessary. I mean, there are so many people availing of the services of that pantry, and they work closely with the police and the barangay officers to make it more following health protocols, for instance. And while there are rumors maybe that, but this all died, and feel that there is the altruism, the philanthropy and the work of the community. I mean, a lot of people are helping in the pantry, not only in that area, but almost so many people from all walks of life. They just provide goods to that pantry to enable it. So we feel that is that a story? I mean, for a community that really works together, helping each other, and that's seen. A lot of people are availing of that service. Should we put that in and ask the organizer, are you, So we think that that's not important. The important thing is, that we are all helping each other in this time of the pandemic.
Thank you, Army.
Did I answer your question, Joyce? Or
Yeah. I
okay.
understand. See,
Because we know each other.
Yeah.
We know each other.
Ako, tingin ko, we should give Tina the benefit of the doubt, no? Kasi journalist siya. So, meron siya siguro nakuhang impormasyon about Patricia noon or about the pantry, which could have triggered her to ask that question. But, ang masasabi ko lang, hindi malinaw sa kanyang questioning bakit itinanong kung may communist link si Patricia noon. Saan ba nanggaling yun? Meron ba siyang informasyon na nakuha? Kanino nanggaling yun? Dapat sinabi niya, galing sa police, galing sa military, galing kay Parlade. Hindi malinaw Parang sinabi niya, parang inaakusahan niya si Patricia na merong links sa communist mula noon hanggang ngayon. Diba? Parang ganun ang kakapresent tanong Pero hindi ko tinatawaran yung kakayahan ni Tina na magtanong kasi baka meron siyang informasyon na hindi natin alam kung saan niya nakuha. Pero kulang nga yung kanyang pagkakatanong. Hindi kumpleto.
Yeah. Joyce?
Yes, go ahead.
Curious ako, since binanggit na ni Manny, did we ever watch the report of Tina after that? Meron ba siya naging report on that?
Yes, she did. She did a report on it.
Kasi yung question ko din kay Manny is, even to Rides, yung ganung pagtatanong, anong implikasyon nun sa pagpa-file mo ng report?
But I think, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Go ahead. Malaki yung implikasyon do sa the way she asked the question. Malaking bahagi yun ng kanyang gagawing report sa GMA, no? Kasi nga, she's giving Patricia noon the chance to refute or straighten out things. But hindi lang magandang pakinggan, no? Hindi lang magandang pakinggan yung the way she handled the question. Pero tingin ko, yung sa report niya, doon pa rin nakasentro. Doon pa rin sa denial ni Patricia noon about yung sa pagkarentag sa kanya. So palagay ko, malaking bagay yon sa reporting niya. Naka-apekto yung sa kanyang pag-report.
Just may tanong ako kay Rides. Hi, Rides. I hope okay na
hi.
yung connection ni Rides. Rides, as a trained journalist, paano mo, kung ikaw nasa sitwasyon, paano ka magtatanong? How would you phrase or rephrase it?
Yeah, on my part kasi, ako pag nagtatanong, I usually ini-employ ko yung public journalism approach. Through public journalism approach, pinagkikwento ko muna yung mga sources ko, and right there, pag meron akong napulot na magandang follow-up, doon ako nagtatanong to find out the elephant in the room. Now, on yung question kasi ni Tina, ako tingin ko doon, meron siyang sinususugan na storya kay Patricia noon. Kaya lang yung manner of questioning, medyo sumimplang siya ng konti. Pero, yun nga, sana kinuha niya lang muna yung reaction niya. Siguro kung ako magtatanong doon kay Patricia, I will just ask her, ano ba yung reaction niya sa, she was red tag ng organization, para makuha natin yung reaction, yung sagot na siya ni Patricia noon. Kasi Tina, tingin ko doon, meron siyang sinususugan na istorya, meron na siyang research about her. Kaya lang medyo, yun nga, sumimplag yung tanong. Pero ako, my way of as a practice dito sa countryside, yung public journalism approach, I let the people speak out. And from that, I pick up what would be the best question I could throw them to pursue the story I wanted to write.
Yeah.
Yun.
Joyce, which leads me to my next question for Prof. Danny Araw, with your permission. Prof. Dan, curious din ako. Meron bang klaseng pagtatanong na for print, na binabagay sa print, at saka tanong na pang-broadcast?
Alam mo Ariel, in a commercialized form of media, nagkakaroon ng ganong nuances. Kasi parang may sinasabi sila na pagka may element ng entertainment that would be good for television, dapat umiiyak yung source, dapat may konting drama habang nagsasalita yung source. Minsan pa nga yung gawain ng ilang mga periodista sa TV, I'm sorry to say this, parang nire-rehearse pa yung mga soundbite. Kasi may mga naiisip sila na magandang soundbite, yun yung pinapasabi dun sa source. I mean no disrespect dun sa mga ganong klaseng gawain. Kaya lang that would be very unethical and unprofessional. To answer your question directly, kung pagbabatayan natin yung theoretical, empirical, and normative standards of journalism, wala dapat pagkakaiba. Siguro yung pagkakaiba lang, yung pangangailangan para sa audio o kaya sa video. But other than that, kumbaga parang it's the same set of questions dapat yung tatanungin na research-based at saka probing instead of leading, exploratory instead of accusatory, tapos truth-telling instead of red tagging or fake news. So wala dapat na pagkakaiba. Pagkakaiba, Sir Dan, mamaya pag-usapan natin yung PCOO directive kasi it's also a very interesting discussion on that. Joyce, please.
There are just a few questions sa ating chat group. Si Miss Faye, kami pumapasok lang na interference pa. Ano lang please, pa-mute lang.
Pa-mute lang po.
Si Faye Aureliana asked, do you think Tina Perez should issue a statement? Now, she phrased her question. You know what, Faye? Actually, we asked Tina to join us today. I messaged her and told her na, gusto mo bang sumama? Kasi healthy exercise naman itong gagawin natin, di ba? Hindi ito pag-aakusa sa kahit na kanino, kundi pagtingin talaga sa profession natin at kung saan tayo pwedeng mag-improve. Kaya lang yun nga, parang meron yatang directive ang management na wag na muna. So, kaya hindi siya naka-join sa atin, but she would have wanted, I think. May mga tanong din sa chat group. Very quickly.
Joyce, excuse me.
Yes po. Yes, Kaloy.
Yung question you face, it's a good question, no? I don't think Tina needs to issue a statement or apology. I think the best na parang rejoinder niya dito is if she has something, if she has a solid story about red tagging and Ana Patricia Noon, she should let it out. She should share it to us. Because, personally, I think yung tanong was legitimate. Although we don't agree on how she did it. I think exploring yung communist links ng whoever, precisely because it is a very, very huge, it's a huge agenda and subject in the public sphere right now. I think that's a legitimate subject to cover by journalists. But then again, inevitably they will run into the question of, so what if they're communists? Communism is not illegal in this country. What crime exactly are you trying to impute to these people by accusing them of being communist, by using McCarthyist language like that? Again, I would like to emphasize, communism is not illegal in the Philippines. There's nothing wrong with being a communist. Correct. It's only become illegal if you take up arms. And that's my whole beef here. Which is that a lot of the aspects in this story are not being covered even by the media themselves. I mean, let's just be honest about it. Very, very rare ako nakakabasa ng story that points out that, red tagging story that points out that communism is not illegal in the Philippines. Why are you people doing this? What have they actually done?
It's the same. I have the same issue, Kaloy. When I read some sa ibang media reports and they call it communist terrorist. And then I always ask, may na-prescribe na ba kayo? Kasi in fact wala pa. So dapat legally walang ganong CTG na branding basahin ko lang yung ibang comments / questions sa chat group.
Joyce,
yes. Sorry, go Manny. Yes, please go ahead.
Yung kasing sinasabing communist terrorist, terminology ng military yan. So as journalists, dapat natin ginagamit yan. No? Eh, we are playing into their propaganda pag ginagamit natin yan. So yun lang masabi ko dyan.
Thank you, Manny, for pointing that out. Just very quickly, I'd like to read some of the comments/questions from Demto Anta. Kuya Demto Anda from Palawan. We all have bad days in the beat that we end up making fools of ourselves. Totoo ito. Even veterans fall for that mistakes, and I think it's sometimes because we don't anymore take time to actually prepare for an interview. For him daw, the biggest takeaway here is to be prepared. Next, to think before you click. Si Alcuin Papa, sabi niya, by all means, let's ask Parlade et al. Their basis for red tagging. But it was also Patricia Non who was holding the press con. Does that mean that the topic is off limits for Non? Ang disclaimer niya, he also believes there was a better way to ask that question. From Darian, I think it would have been better to frame the question in a manner na, what can you say about the allegations that community pantries have ties to the Reds or the red tagging of community pantries in general? May tanong si Rainiel Figueroa, baka ito medyo, hindi ko ito masyadong kabisa. Okay, I got this one. Paano raw yung issue kay Alvin El Chico and Angel Locsin? I think this is the one na yung may namatay kasi doon sa, doon sa community pantry that was opened by Angel. Yeah, so far yun pa lang naman ang mga ang ating mga questions sa chat group. Not sure sa ating FB Live. Manny, since editor ka, kung sa'yo pinasa ni Tina yung ganung storya, paano mo dapat ni-reframe o ni-recast yung story?
Depende sa kung ano yung pinail niya, no? Na report. Pero kung uulitin lang niya yung tanong niya doon sa kanyang report, talagang mali. Mali. Hindi talaga dapat pumasa yun, no? Sa editor. Pero kung wala naman sa report na sinabit niya, na directly tinatanong niya kung meron ka bang link sa communist movement, siguro tignan natin as a whole, sa buong picture, kung ano yung ginawang pag-report ni Tina dun sa issue. Pero kung yung meat ng story niya, nakasentro doon sa tanong niya, may mali nga doon. Dapat baguhin ng editor yung storya.
Interesting. Yes, John.
Yes, I got something, a link from someone in GMA, and I posted it sa chat room. That's the 10-minute report of Tina Perez that aired that night. It was explained to me that it was the lead story, and I haven't seen the whole thing, but the anchors who introduced the story emphasized the denial of any communist links. And I think somewhere in the first minute or so, we can see the denial itself. Which is, in fact, actually, ang ganda ng pagkasagot ni Patring Nono. And her answer also that where she asked, bakit dapat hindi na ako, I don't have to explain myself. That was also carried there. So I just wanted to put it there because people are asking. So yun yung report na yun. Now, this is not my own view. Yung nagpadala lang sa akin sa GMA, sabi niya, if we can just compare what was the size of the audience that heard Tina ask that offensive question, and what was the size of the audience that heard her final report. Yun ang gusto niyang ilagay sa public discussion. Thanks.
Okay, Joyce, in relation to that particular report of Tina, there's a question from Francis Palaspas. Here goes. Regardless if Tina is a big story, would that validate her way of questioning?
Yes, definitely.
Sir Dan, please.
Pwedeng mag-react lang.
Sure, Sir Dan.
Yeah, yung shinare na link ni John, exactly, that's the video, and I watched it as well. To be fair, may multi-sourcing. Pinanood ko yan from start to finish. And multi-sourcing naman. Hindi lang naman yun nakatali sa press con, may mga in-interview rin na mga government official. Totoo, as a lead story, nandun yung denial ng red tagging. Kaya lang yung contextualization, doon nga nagkulang kasi nga medyo kapos sa research at walang masyadong explanation kung ano yung mga binanggit ni Kaloy on the implications of red tagging in the past and even in the future based on what happened in the past. So kahit si Parlade, kinuhanan din ng soundbite roon. Kaya lang, ang problema nga dun sa naging storya, parang nabigyan ng plataforma pa rin to further gaslight and to further spread yung disinformation related to red tagging. So that makes the report still problematic. Kasi nga yung parang tinutuntungan niya, yung anggulo na meron nga bang communist links o wala. Tapos, syempre, to be fair, may denial si Patreng noon, pero doon na natapos. Pero binalikan pa rin, parang ini-insist ng mga government official na kahit nagde-deny siya, parang hindi pa rin maikakailan na ginagamit ng mga komunista di umano yung community pantry para i-pursue yung kanilang sariling agenda. So valid rin yung tanong, yung punto nung kaibigan ni John sa GMA, we have to look at the number of audiences dun na tumingin dun sa final output ni Tina. But nevertheless, ang bottom line pa rin dito, we still reaffirm an old saying in journalism. To get the right answers, you must be asking the right questions. And yung pinagdedebatihan natin dito ngayon ay yung katumpakan o yung appropriateness of the question itself, which led to the less analysis, the fact that the source was not able to further deepen her insights regarding not just the civic duty that she's doing, but also the resulting consequences of red tagging, kung ano yung pwedeng mangyari sa kanya. Yan lang po.
Joyce?
Ariel, if I may add something?
Yeah, sure, go.
Ako naman ngayon, at this point, I think, hindi naman immaterial, but secondary na sa akin yung the manner of the questioning ni Tina and the way she asked the question. Ang mas malaking issue sa akin ngayon actually is that this episode brought to the fore a larger issue, a larger problem in the journalism community, which is that not a lot of you guys, I'm no longer a journalist, I can say you, not a lot of you guys are doing your homework in trying to understand the issues that you're covering. The red tagging, for instance, not a lot of work on this one and the implications of red tagging. Why are we buying what Parladi is saying? Why are we still parroting the lies of Badoy? Why are we still, treating as gospel truth whatever comes out of the mouth of Parladi? That's because apparently a lot of you guys don't know any better. I'm not saying I know better. I'm saying that you guys need to step up your game in trying to do your job, basically. Fact check. By now, if you all gather all your resources as journalists and your talent and skills in investigative reporting, you would have produced a mountain of report refuting the red tagging that's going on and basically the violence that it inflicts on people. That's my bigger concern. So moving forward, I think this is a moment for journalists to really start studying the subjects they're reporting and try to be as comprehensive and contextual as possible.
Yeah. Can I respond to Kaloy?
Yes, sure, Manny. Yeah.
Tingin ko naman, Kaloy, the journalists are doing their jobs, their homework. We are not parroting Parlade. We are not accepting yung sinasabi niya. We actually challenge him. You are listening to the programs and the interviews we did on Parlade and Badoy. We are challenging him. Hindi namin ina-accept. Okay. At alam na namin ano yung red tagging kasi matagal na tayong nagko-cover ng red tagging. Hindi lang panahon ni Duterte, panahon pa ni Gloria, may red tagging na.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Manny, hindi ko nila lahat. Pero, generally, I think a lot of the journalists that are covering these issues are coming up short in terms of, covering this very substantially, significantly.
Joyce,
sorry, balikan lang natin yung sinabi ni John kanina, no? Ako napaisip ako doon Parang ngayon kasi because of the situation that we have right now and how we do our press conferences now, naging iba ang media product natin. Hindi na lang siya basta-basta yung ni-report natin kundi pati yung press con na na online napapanood ng ibang tao because webinar format siya or Zoom format siya. Dati kasi pag nagpatawag ng press con, hindi naman yan lahat ay binobroadcast. Maliban lang siguro kung press con sa Malacanang or press con sa Defense, then PTV4 will actually carry it from start to finish. Pero hindi ganoon sa ibang press conferences. Pero ngayon, automatic may audience ka kaagad na ibang tao. Hindi lang yung journalist at yung source. So pati yung mismong manner of questioning mo, kahit naman hindi yun talaga yung magiging produkto mo later on, pati yun subject to scrutiny ngayon.
Correct.
So kaya parang kailangan very aware tayo na may ganoong pagbabago sa ating landscape at pati yun at napakabilis ng reaction.
Correct. Which brings me to a very intriguing question from Jaime also. I told you, di ba meron tayong warning, this is not for the faint of heart. Tama talaga. Okay. Jaime Oscar Salazar asked, it's been mentioned that Tina Pangilinan Perez was advised by management, GMA management, to keep a low profile at the moment. What is the standard or ideal procedure in cases like this when a news story provokes an outcry over ethical issues? How does the media organization make itself accountable? May karugtong to na question ha, sa isa ding nagtanong from Kim Balasbas. Meron siyang inatinan na webinar. Ang speaker doon si Dr. Josa Labiste.
Yeah.
Oo, ang sinabi ni Dr. Josa Labiste doon ng UP is that wag sana, it would have been better if the question wasn't asked at all. Reaction please, or answers to the three questions yun. Or 2 questions and a comment. Yeah.
Can I go first? Okay lang.
Okay. Sir Dan, ikaw na. Kasi ikaw yung unang kumibo.
Sige. Anyway,
Go.
siguro the long and short of it is, Dr. Labiste's claim is very much valid. It would only be raised if there's really enough evidence to back up yung claim of red tagging, and then yun yung itatanong mo dun sa source mo. Hanggang dun lang. Pero to ask, a yes or no question, as Kaloy mentioned, na bordering on McCarthyism talaga. So medyo we have to be a bit worried about that given the dangers of red tagging. So with regard to internal mechanisms, I think as far as journalism education is concerned, there should be a clear, training or retooling for all of us. And we should be open to that. Even our own Department of Journalism would have its occasional Graciano Lopez Haina Community Journalism Workshop where some of the participants here, I noticed, benefited from such training. So kumbaga sa academe naman, it's not as if we know everything. In fact, we even need to get expertise from the practitioners themselves to teach our students. That's why pagka pinagtuturo namin, whether sa formal education o sa informal education, yung mga practitioner, we recognize the need to mix both theory and practice in journalism. So having said that, this means that in the case of Tina, yung isang internal mechanism would be, yung training, and of course, yung binanggit ni Joyce kanina, criticism and self-criticism sessions. So we have to be able to, absorb certain criticisms, especially now that all of us are under the microscope, no thanks to social media. So as much as journalists can give it to the powers that be and to erring officials particularly, we should also learn how to take it pagka tayo naman yung merong batikos. Kung basta't constructive naman yung criticism, I think we will go a long way in terms of improving our craft. Yun lang po.
Joyce, may...
Yes.
Sure.
Dagdagan ko lang yung... sorry, Manny, go ahead.
Manny, then Kaloy.
Touch move daw. Manny muna.
Kasi tinatanong ni Joyce kanina kung dapat bang manahimik yung GMA sa nangyari, no? Dahil may controversy. Ako, dapat hindi sila manahimik doon. They should issue a statement, not necessarily apology, but to clear up things, no? To clear up things. Kasi yung ating credibility ang at stake dito eh. Nasira ang ating credibility. So, ang kadalasan kasi, ang media, pag nabatikos, tumatahimik. No? Pag nagkamali tayo, ayaw nating aminin minsan. No? pag nagkamali tayo, aminin natin kasi dan lamang natin na mabawi yung ating kredibilidad bilang journalist.
Kaloy.
Yeah, gusto ko lang ibalikan yung question about Josa Laliste, Professor Laliste. And I'm guessing here kung bakit sinabi niya yun, kung bakit sabi niya, sana hindi na lang tinanong yung tanong.
Okay.
My guess is that because Josa knows exactly the toll red tagging has done on society, that she probably felt na huwag mo nang i-dignify yan. Because again, mabalik ako dun sa kwento, na itong red tagging, hindi lang ito basta-basta salita lang. Marami nang namamatay dahil dito. And that's the larger point I'd like to make in terms of really appreciating why. Not really just not just about the question about Tina, but also the question by Tina, but also the larger issue of really knowing and appreciating the effect red tagging has had.
Pero Kaloy, sorry, mabilis na to, klaruin lang natin for our audience or audiences. Sinasabi natin dito, hindi masamang magtanong about red tagging, pero dapat tinanong to ng maayos, correct?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Kasi baka
it is an issue.
Baka isipin na ay, hindi dapat pala itinanong yung red tagging. Hindi bawal tinanong yung red tagging, pero dapat naayos yung tanong about red tagging. Tama. Naklaro natin yan.
Yeah, tama yun. And in fact, balikan ko yung sinabi rin ni Alcoin na tinanong niya kung na si Patring noon nga yung nagpatawag ng press conference. Yung red tagging ba off limits? No, it's not that. Walang sinasabing gano'n na off limits. In fact, kung tinanong lang ng maayos yung tanong na yun na hindi gano'n ka-offensive, I think mas na-explore pa nila yung issue ng red tagging because, Patring being so intelligent, I think she will have answered it in a way na mas mapalalim pa yung discussion.
Joyce? Yes. Who is this? Sorry.
Sir John.
Okay, Sir John. Okay, John, go.
Ang daming mga magagandang issues. I'll try to answer point by point. So yung silence of GMA, I agree with Manny and I'm sure the others in the panel. But GMA should have taken the opportunity to explain its processes. No, the explanation can help strengthen our understanding of media literacy for one thing, right? Ang nangyari ngayon is it's the GMA reporters who have a presence on social media who bore the brunt of the criticism. Right. So someone like Rafi Tima, for instance, parang he's being asked to defend all of GMA's practices. Hindi dapat ganon. But again, it's really up to each individual organization. Unfortunately, GMA is no longer a member of the KBP. So any kind of suasion that KBP can exert on GMA, well, that's no longer possible. No? Yun, GMA should have
issued a position statement.
Should have embraced the controversy and explained itself. That would have lessened the burden on their reporters.
And this is not the time to play ostrich and bury your head in the ground.
That's right, yeah. Yung point naman na yung tanong ni Diosa, Professor Labiste, na should the question have been asked at all? It shouldn't have been asked at all. I like Kaloy's nuanced point, na it's the framing, but it's not off limits, no? Pero may sinabi rin si Kaloy earlier that yung sabi nga niya na let us not play into the hands of organized disinformation campaigns, right? Of gaslighting and so on and so forth. I think this actually boils down to the question of yung old principle of journalism known as agenda setting. No? I guess it's in an idealized world, the press can help set the agenda. Pero now it's almost always just playing catch up, no? Yung sa point na so maganda rin yung point ni Professor Danny, if you watch the entire clip, the 10-minute report, which is unusual considering how expensive airtime is. The 10-minute report of Tina Panganibin Paris on April 20, multiple sources and so on, pero medyo kulang pa din, no? So yung kulang ng context, no? So I think doon ko naiintindihan. So if I could put the perspectives of Danny and Kaloy together, no, that there should be a stronger pushback on the part of journalists, especially when we know we're being given BS, no? There's this whole we've had experience, as Manny rightly pointed out, about red tagging already. The inability to add that particular context, no, is in itself a failure, no. But going back to the why is it that the government sets the agenda? Part of the reason is it's structural to the media business. If you look at our beat system, most of the beats are defined according to government agencies. Malacanang, Senate, House, DND, PNP, right? DILG. Tapos pag ano na lang sa Intramuros, baka isasabay na yung Catholic Church and so on. But a lot of it is defined by our relationship to the state. Now when that state is itself problematic, is pushing disinformation, malaking problema, no? So yung question ni Kaloy actually should force us to ask ourselves, if the government is like this, should we still organize our news gathering operation in a way that will favor a government like this?
John, yung scenario natin ngayon, yung landscape natin ngayon, parang kahit pa paano nag-even out ba yung field? Yung playing field, I mean. Because ngayon, lahat naka-Zoom lang yan.
Actually, of course, yeah, the online news conferences actually have made into the hands of the powers that be, no? So, katulad ni Rocky, if he doesn't like your question or your looks, you're just muted, no? Hindi pwede pagkatapos, and in fact this is such a practice of ours, right? You ask these questions and then after that, pag wala na yung mga cameras, then you go to the source and ask your own specific questions kasi ayaw mo maskupan, no? There is no more.
Or gusto mong mag-exclusive.
Wala na ganung klaseng dynamic. So of course it plays into the hands of but at the same time I want to go back to that point that my friend from GMA said, no? So tama rin siya, pero at the same time I want to point the limitations, no? I want to point to the limitations. So okay, Tina's GMA news report had maybe 1 million viewers, and then her question maybe had 1,000. Okay, that does not mean that we should not pay attention to what was happening on social media. No matter how small the audience is, it is still an audience. So in other words, we should still meet the expectations of that audience. Of course, it's a whole new world, so we're still getting the hang of it and so on. Pero whatever the size of the audience, it's the audience, and we should respect.
Yeah. Joyce, binanggit mo one time nag-deactivate si Tina, no?
Sure kung nag-deactivate siya or parang nag-ano lang siya, nag-detox lang siya ng konti sa Facebook.
Oo. Okay, babalikan ko lang si Joyce, si Rides, as a community journalist contributing for Rappler and Manila Times, Mindanao Times, sorry, Manila Times. Rides, nandiyan ka pa?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Sabi ko sana, magparamdam ka, ha? Hindi. Kung ikaw nasa sitwasyon, anin ko lang ng konti, playing the devil's advocate, nasa sitwasyon ka, nagtanong ka, meron kang alam mo kung anong susulatin mo, kaya yung framing of questions mo, ganun-ganun na lang, di ba? Kasi meron kang gusto talagang i-point out sa magiging report mo after, whether it's an ambush interview or Zoom meeting, etc. Kung after nun, tapos nagkaroon ng criticisms against you, tapos it turned out na wala ka na kong suporta from your news organization, news outfit, albeit talagang nireprimand ka pa na, bakit doon ka nagtanong? Bakit? Mali yun, ganun-ganun. Parang stupid ka, ganun-ganun. How do you feel?
Well,
wala kang support from your management.
ang kaibahan kasi na ito sa amin sa regional based media. Wala kaming particular beat. So, kami mismo yung gather kung ano yung gusto namin gawing story. Ako, I write for more on feature story or investigative story. Mga investigative story. So, usually nasa field ako, usually. So, bihira ako mag-attend ng mga press con ngayon, ng mga webinars online dahil nga meron akong pinupur sa mga stories from the grassroots. Now, ang kaibahan kasi ngayon nga yung platform natin, yung landscape of presscon is na iba because of pandemic, so online na siya. But then again, kung ako magtatanong na question, I see to it na pag-aaralan ko, ipi-frame ko na yung question ko, pag-aaralan ko, I will go a thorough research dun sa taong tatanungin ko. Naka-frame na yung itatanong ko sa mga stories na gusto kong gawin. And then, pag hindi pa ako satisfied, hanap at talagang habulin ko siya, kukulitin ko siya sa mga katanungan ko. But then again, pagdating naman sa lack of support, hindi ko naramdaman na walang suporta sa akin ng desk, both ang Rappler, ang Manila Times, kasi pag sinabi ko naman na I'm going to pursue this kind of stories, ando naman sila, all out support sila sa akin. So far yung mga stories na ginagawa ko, wala namang problema sa desk ko.
Okay, that's good to hear. In terms of ito na, siguro mga ilang minutes na isi-segue natin yung sa PCO directive against the backdrop of the pandemic, Joyce. Pero ito, Kaloy, para to sa'yo, ito yung hinihintay nila. Kasi ako nakita ko kung paano mo pinost din sa Facebook mo, kung how would you rephrase it. Curious yung mga estudyante natin. Ito Journalism 101 na to, framing the question, etc., reframing it. Paano mo itatanong yun? Kids, you have to listen. Ito na yung gusto niyo itanong. Ito yung gusto niyo marinig. Paano mo ikaw, kung andun ka, paano mo i-phrase yung question, i-frame yung question na yun?
Well, good, yeah, no? At least napunta na tayo dyan sa usapin na yun na very important. In fact, maraming comments na ganyan. Siguro ang gagawin ko, medyo mahaba-habang pasakali ang gagawin ko muna bago ko, kung gagamitin ko man yung phrase na yun, na basically, are you or have you ever been a communist or do you have communism? Mahaba-habang pasakali muna. Mahaba-habang pagpapaliwanag sa kay Patreng at sa audience na nakikinig na kaya ako tinatanong ito. So, ganito siguro pagtatanong ko. Patreng, alam naman natin, red tagging, malaking issue yan. Ito ang buod ng kampanya ngayon ng gobyerno against NPA, CPP, NPA. Pero alam din naman natin na marami na ring maraming nare-red tag na napatay na at marami sa kanila ay under threat hanggang ngayon. Dose-dosena na ang tinangkang patayin. Pero importanteng tanong ito, Patreng, at sana hindi mo mamasamain, pero ito
Nawala si Kaloy.
Kaloy?
Grabe naman ang suspense.
Oo nga. Bakit siya nawala?
Biglang.
Kung saan? Andun na siya.
Andun na siya. Oo, yun yung hinihintay natin
Ano ba yan, Kaloy? Bumalik ka naman.
Hintayin natin. Nako, bumulaga si Ares Gutierrez.
Hello, Ares. Even si Alden Monson, journalist, is asking there kung paano ba yung maayos dapat na pagtatanong.
Correct. Sana bumalik na si Kaloy kasi yun ang gusto itanong sa kanya. Kasi talaga nag-offer siya ng alternative to that question kung siya yung magtatanong or any other journalist for that matter. If he or she is to frame it.
Pwede mag-weigh in saglit.
Yes, Sir Dan. Go.
Ayan, maganda yung sinasabing pasakalya ni Kaloy bago naputol. At any rate, sa akin naman, there is a better way to discuss the topic of red tagging without making any direct reference to Patreng's alleged membership or involvement in the communist movement. Depende yan dun sa anggulo na kukunin mo o yung paksa o yung anggulo na kukunin mo na ire-report mo sa araw na yon. Kasi at that particular time, yung context naman kasi, ulitin natin it's the accusation na hina-hijack di umano ng mga komunista yung concept ng community pantry to the point na parang sinasabi nga siguro yung maginhawa community pantry may tie up sa ilang mga aktivista. Okay? Pero there was no reference yet to the background, okay, of Patreng noon na public knowledge naman yung pagiging aktivista niya. Pero wala pa yung red tagging against her. So if you phrase a question about regarding Patreng, tandaan natin sa simula ng press con, binanggit na niya yung background sa buhay niya at hindi niya man niya kinaila yung pagiging UP student niya, yung pagiging student leader niya sa UP at yung pagiging presidente niya ng Alay Sining, Karatula at ibang Stand UP at iba pang mga organisasyon sa universidad. Disclosure pala I've known Patreng when she was a student at UP. So naabutan ko naman siya na teacher ako at estudyante siya dati. Although hindi ko siya naging estudyante. So that disclosure should be made. At any rate, ang punto naman dito, yung pwede mong tanong kasi if you want to be direct, how does red tagging affect you? Paano ka ba naapektuhan ng red tagging na ito? Diba? Or pwedeng hindi mo sabihin na paano ba naapektuhan yung red tagging sa community pantry, di ba? So kasi pagka probing question, dapat it should be answerable ba? It should start with how, what, and why para hindi siya yes or no question at may tsansa at may oportunidad yung source na makapagpalalim at makapagbigay ng mas malalim na insight. Kasi yung research sa periodismo, nangyayari yan bago yung press con. Hindi dun sa mismong press con ka nagtatanong ng mga datos So as a rule of thumb, pag alam mo na yung datos mo, saka ka na magpapalalim. So that's where the how, the why, and the what would be very important. So as far as probing questions are concerned, dapat open-ended questions yan. Mahalaga rin naman yung close-ended, yung yes or no questions, pero mas may emphasis dapat dun sa mga probing. Kaya yung how does red tagging affect you, you wouldn't get that much backlash pagka tinanong mo yon kasi ako sa tingin ko valid naman yon kasi parang tinatanong mo yung insight ng isang inakusahan. Paano ka ba naapektuhan itong mga akusasyong ito? So pagka ganon, hindi naman siguro marumi yung tanong na yon.
Yeah, that's one way to frame it or reframe it or phrase it. Let's go back to Kalor. I think he's already inside the
Sorry.
Ayan. Doon na kami. Suspense.
Sorry, nakalimutan ko na sa cellphone pala ako. Naubusan ng baterya.
Sige.
So I don't know how much of the thing I said you caught, no? But basically, babalikan ko. Yung pagtatanong ko doon ay medyo may pasakali lang ko.
Pasakali, oo.
Sasabihin ko kay Patreng in probably this manner. Patreng, tanong na to ay medyo may context ng konti. Alam naman natin na red tagging ay ang issue ngayon. Marami nang namamatay sa red tagging, maraming hinaharas sa red tagging. Isa sa mga human rights issues sa Pilipinas ngayon na talagang ang dami-daming natatakot. So I hope you don't mind if I ask you, Patreng, kasi may inaaspasan ka ng gobyerno sa parlate. I hope you don't mind if I maybe direct sa iyo tungkol dito. Hindi ko naman sinasabing maniniwala ako sa sinasabi ng gobyerno, but since they're the one doing the accusation, I have to ask you, do you have any links at all with the Communist Party? Do you think this is itong red tag na to? Kung wala, pwede mong ipaliwanag sa amin kung bakit ginagawa ito sa inyo. Yung ganon, tanong. Kasi again, yung punto ko kanina, the way she phrased the question, walang pinagkaiba sa McCarthy's question, are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? Yun ang yun ang punto ko doon na wala yung context na yun. So, again, may paulit-ulit na sinasabi ko, hindi ko sinasabing hindi dapat nagtanong si Tina. Hindi ko sinasabing hindi dapat nagtatanong ang mga journalists. Ang sinasabi, aralin ng maayos yung mga issue kung saan nyo ibabase yung tanong. Kasi kung hindi nyo inaral yan, wala kayong pagkakaiba kay Parlade. Hindi nyo sasabihin kung ano yung pagkakaintindi nyo sa issue na ito na sa tingin ko from a human rights perspective, non-issue kasi hindi nga kriminal ang maging komunista sa Pilipinas. Kung gagawin yan, yung nga sinasabi ko, pinaparot nilang si Parlade.
Joyce?
Manny, I want to pick Manny's brain. How would you have framed the question?
Ako, tingin ko, kasi mali talaga na balikan mo kung meron ng background si Patreng, no, sa nakaraan. Hindi issue yun Kasi alam mo, marami sa gobyerno naging parte ng makakaliwang organisasyon, pero ngayon number one defender ni Pangulong Duterte, no? At hindi talaga issue yung background mo sa tanong na yan. So, pwede mo itanong kay Patreng na, Patreng, may mga aligasyon laban sa community pantry na ito raw ay laban sa gobyerno na parang gustong siraan ng ating gobyerno na walang ginagawa. Ano ba masahe mo rito? Siguro ganun ang pagkakatanong mo. Ano ba masahe mo rito? Bakit kaya nasabi to nila sa iyo? Anong basihan nila? Meron ba?
Yeah. Joyce, thanks very much, Manny. Bago tayo mag-segue, ipapart a bit itong usapin ng framing the question or asking the question and delving into the PCOO directive against the backdrop of the pandemic. Sir Dan, since na pag-uusapan na natin red tagging at saka ang dami nating mga estudyante ngayon, kahit na paulit-ulit mo itong sabihin, probably pang ilan mo na to, pero iba naman to, baka hindi pa ka pa naman na-encounter nito. Paka-explain na kasi sa kanila, bakit masama or napaka-dangerous ng red tagging journalist or anybody sa bansang ito. Bakit, Sir Dan? Paki-stress again.
Siguro sa konteksto ng komunikasyon at saka periodismo, pwede nating tingnan yung red tagging bilang pinakamataas na uri ng pekeng balita o fake news sa dalawa yung dahilan bakit siya highest form of fake news. Una, walang malinaw na ebidensya na ibinibigay. Yung mga nag-aakusa, lalo na yung NTF-ELCAC, AFP, PNP, na magpapatunay na talagang may link sa communist movement o revolutionary movement yung mga inaakusahan. Kasi ganito sa totoo lang, kung merong ebidensya, dapat matagal na silang nahabla sa korte o meron ng proper charges in court. Pero hanggang ngayon, wala. At saka kahit si Parlade mismo, dun sa pinakahuling interview sa The Chiefs, kung di ako nagkakamali, parang ang banggit niya nagbe-verify pa sila at nagde-data gathering pa sila dun sa red tagging accusation against Patreng noon. Tapos kung babasahin nyo yung mga post ni Badoy, ni Lorraine Badoy, tsaka ni Parlade sa social media, kaya sila na-suspend ng ilang beses sa Facebook dahil dun sa misinformation na ginagawa. Ngayon, so yun yung usapin ng fake news. Bakit naman pinakamataas na uri siya? Kasi literally, at dito natin masasagot ng direkta yung tanong mo, literally, pwede kang mamatay dahil sa akusasyon ng red tagging. Alam mo, ikaw pagka inaakusahan ka na ikaw kapitalista, ikaw neoliberal, ikaw pasista o kung ano man, hindi ka papatayan at hindi ka mamamatay Pero yung tendency talaga nandyan. Isa-isahin natin si Randall Echaniz, Randy Malayaw, Sara Bernardo, Carlito Badyon, marami pang iba, Jory Porcia na nag-set up ng community kitchen last year na naging biktima rin ng extrajudicial killings. So kung tayo, nagmamahal tayo sa ating kapwa at gusto natin magpatuloy yung community pantry, dapat talaga itigil yung red tagging kasi baka mamaya, ayokong isipin yung masamang mangyayari, pero baka yung kahinatnan ng mga organizer ng community pantry ay katulad ni na Jory Porcia na community kitchen ang ginagawa. Ayaw natin ang kultura na parang sasabihin natin, sana kung may paparusahan man lang sa mga organizer ng community pantry, sana katulad lang ng mga marikina na kinulong lang. Kaya lang again, that is also unacceptable, 'di ba? Ikukulong ka dahil lang napagbintangan kang komunista. At saka sa ngayon parang ang pulisiya ng pamahalaan, pwede ang community pantry sa mga civilian, pero pag aktivista ka, parang hindi pwede kasi may agenda ka pagka ikaw tutulong. Yeah. So again, that also raises another problem. Pero yung pinaka major concern natin dito, yung binanggit din ni Kaloy ng ilang beses na, yung extrajudicial killings that become an inherent part with red tagging accusations. So kaya nga even among activists, parang ang pakiusap nga sa media ng maraming mga aktivista, hindi naman sinasabing wag pag-usapan ang red tagging, pero wag nang bigyan ng plataforma pa yung mga nagpapakalat na mga pekeng balita, yung mga nagsasabi na nagre-red tag sila sa totoo lang pero truth tagging daw yung kanilang ginagawa, which is very ungrammatical din, which is another dimension kasi tamang salita. Marami pang kailangan sabihin tungkol dito, pero yung bottom line, pwede kang mamatay dahil sa red tagging. Yun yung pinakadirektang sagot. Salamat po.
Klaro po ito mga estudyante na nakikinig ngayon. Sir Danny, sisigawin ko na, Joyce, with your permission, you mentioned about policy. Please tell us about this PCOO directive. Ano ito? Bakit ito?
This is the internal
Yeah.
memo.
Oo,
It was
oo.
leaked, internal memo ng PCOO.
Oh, anong repercussion nito?
Sige, siguro konting backgrounder lang. Kumalat din naman sa social media yung leaked memorandum. Nung una, aaminin ko, hindi ako masyadong naniwala. Kasi parang anong klaseng ahensya ba naman ang openly magbabanggit ng mga bagay na alam nating open secret sa government media. Pero as it turns out, totoo pala kasi batay sa pahayag ni Gigi Agtay na head ng NIB, yung News and Information Bureau ng PCOO. Sa pagkakaalam ko, Ariel, correct me if I'm wrong, Sunstar siya dati, no?
Sunstar Davao. Sunstar Davao.
Para na ma-contextualize natin yung journalism background niya. Kasi ito hindi to pag-atake kay Gigi mismo na kaibigan din naman natin. Kaya lang ang medyo nakakapagtaka lang, bakit meron ng written directive na magbibigay ng mga report on global data pero ang perspective dapat patunayan that the government is faring better.
Yeah.
I have to raise the point, Sir Danny. I don't think that is isolated or dito lang sa admin na to. I'm very sure in other past administrations, they have also issued similar, at least similar ang intention ng mga directives na i-promote in such a way na maganda yung itsura ng administration. Nagkataon lang na this one, the memo got, na-leak siya.
It's not surprising.
Sige, sorry, Mogs, ikaw na muna.
Sige, kasi ako, naintindihan ko yung trabaho ng government media, no? Kailangan ng propaganda eh.
Yeah.
So, talagang gagawin nila yan. Hindi naman sila BBC, no? Tsaka kung ang PCOO, merong memorandum of agreement o memorandum of understanding sa China at sa Russia, talagang propaganda nga ang lalabas sa ating government media. So talagang malaki ang trabaho nung ating independent media na sabihin na totoo.
Yeah.
No? Yun lang tingin ko dyan.
Actually, when I saw the memo, ang una kong reaksyon ay magpanik ka kung ang nakalagay dyan, i-present natin ng totoo. Or i-present natin ng negative yung gobyerno. Yun ang dapat magpanik tayo.
Mabilis lang before we give the floor to our other colleagues. Mabilis lang. Promise. Ganito, maganda yung binanggit ni Mogs tungkol dun sa yung propaganda. Kasi ang problema, gaya ng nabanggit ni Joyce, hindi na to bago. Kasi through the years, kahit panahon pa ni Coloma, parang sinasabi nila may editorial independence. And in fact, they mentioned BBC several times as a model. Coloma said that, Andanar said that noong 2016, tandang-tanda ko yon. Tsaka siguro ito na rin yung tamang panahon. I'm sorry, Ariel, kung babanggitin ko na to.
No, it's okay. No, I don't mind. Yeah.
Okay, magkakasama tayo noon sa isang committee which seeks to organize the PNA. And alam mo naman yung storya ron, I try to provide certain recommendations
I know.
to ensure editorial independence for the PNA kung paano siya i-organize in order to adhere to the highest standards of journalism. Kasi ako, I want to put it on record, kaya medyo frustrated din ako dun sa lumabas na memo. Anyway, although I wasn't surprised, kasi sa totoo lang, ang perspective talaga ng gobyerno noon, batay sa mga sinasabi nila privately and publicly, is to implement editorial independence and to, yung history kasi ng PNA, nung Philippine News Service pa siya, nung panahon ni Marcos na nung inabsorb ng gobyerno, maganda yung track record ng Philippine News Service nung time na yon. And at the start, maganda rin yung track record ng PNA. And it produced some of the best journalists during the time of, ironically, during the time of martial law. Pero nung nag-resign na sila sa PNA. At any rate, parang may ganong pangako. Pero ngayon, ang kailangang idiin natin dito, the government is appropriating the concept of journalism, particularly editorial independence and truth-telling, in order to suit yung agenda nila and yung narrative nila to make the government look good. So parang this is a form, kaya nga yung government media through the years is a form of co-optation of journalism, a pretentious journalism even, na talagang malaking insulto sa mga, yung sinasabi ni Mogs na mga independent journalists, yung mga tunay na mga periodista. And in fact, I would even dare say, mas mahusay pa ang mga campus journalists sa pag-observe ng journalism principles kumpara sa mga government media na ito. So, yun lang naman ang masasabi ko. Thank you.
Thanks, Sir Danny.
Ariel, if I may weigh in on that one?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
So nabanggit ko na kanina at nabanggit din ni Mogs na I completely agree. Ginagawa naman talaga ng gobyerno ito. No? Whether kung ginagawa, they have precisely the offices to do this propaganda or government-run media machinery. Hindi natin pwedeng ipagkaila sa kanila yan. Siyempre, tayo, mga Pilipino, mga taong bayan, we would prefer na ang media ng gobyerno mas magaling, mas mindful of the facts, the truth, parang BBC, mga ganyan. Pero who are we kidding, right? We are we are under a government right now that does not have loyalty to the truth. So talagang talagang problematic ito. Now, I don't think we can do much. The public and the journalist community can do much about this memo or about how the PCOO will program itself, will run itself. But I think, and I pointed this out before, this is now a challenge for the journalism community to really do better in pushing back in reporting. Mas challenge ito dun sa mga journalists na cover in try to push back, to do better journalism, to fact check these measures pwedeng gawin. Hindi kasi muna talaga maalis sa gobyerno na mag-prop sila and
correct
government line. So ang papel mo as journalists, as gatekeepers, is to try to debunk those lies.
Joyce, with your permission. Yes.
If I may, I want to bring the discussion back to the context for the question raised during that press conference. In a way, all of us have been arguing from context. We just define our contexts differently. I want to add the political context here. Why is the Mahiwaga Community Pantry and many other community pantries, why are they being red tagged in the first place? Because this government feels that they are a threat. So this spontaneous explosion of community action has been very threatening to this do-nothing government, right? And why is red tagging the preferred weapon? Because that's where they put the money, all right? So I actually have a different meaning for the words NTF-LCAC, okay? It does not stand for National Task Force to end the local, whatever. I think it really stands for National Task Force to ensure leadership continuity through anti-communism. All right? So they are. So why on earth would a 3-star general red tag a community pantry? Okay, because this 3-star general is part of the one unit in the government tasked to make sure that the next elections will go their way. Right? That's what the 19 billion peso budget is for. That's why they have this program where they will award cooperative LGUs. And really, for me, that's the larger context. Right?
And that is the context, di ba?
That is the larger context.
Correct.
They are afraid.
Correct.
Because because it's clear now, the community panties prove that our emperor has no clothes. Only a mosquito net.
I would like, if I may, John, I would like to add also, it actually raises to me a question of, given that context and given all the things that's happening with the community pantry and how good it is and how it is addressing a very serious need of the communities.
Poverty,
yourself. Why would you be so fixated about the red tagging of the community pantry? I mean, I know, but the damage that could do to the whole endeavor, to the whole initiative, would be immeasurable, I think. We saw how the community pantry is, as a movement, is filling gaps that the government has left open as far as addressing the pandemic is concerned. Now, by of course, patring yung ng press con, but by dignifying the questions by Parlade, we are actually damaging the whole initiative. We know for a fact that it's a very good initiative.
Yeah. Kaloy, in relation to that and to Sir John's answer kanina, why is it a bad thing for the government to control the narrative, especially in this time of pandemic?
Well,
No, as John pointed out, this is an emperor with no clothes. I mean, he has a lot of vulnerability, so they have to control the narrative, or they can to control the narrative, which I mean, in the age of social media, might be a tad more difficult, I suppose. But we cannot accuse them for lack of trying. I think they're very concerned about controlling the narrative because they know that they're very vulnerable. They know that people, it wouldn't take a lot of, I think, effort, well, probably not, to try to convince Filipinos that they voted for somebody who is practically inutile, as many of us have said. So they want to control the narrative. They're so fixated in controlling the narrative that even the PCO has launched this global initiative to try to influence the thinking of the international community about what's happening. And that's important to this government. They're putting out fires everywhere, or like whack-a-mole sila in doing this. So
kumpas. So
Parladi is serving that purpose.
Sir John, so that's a bad thing for Philippine journalism. Diyan pa ba? Hello?
Sorry?
Yeah, and it's a bad thing for Philippine journalism. Yung binanggit ni Kalor kanina, yung pag-control ng narrative, etc.
Yes. Yes. First of all governments feel the need to control the narrative. I think we should also be worried about governments who don't care about how their programs will be seen by the public, right? But the difference is that this particular government has proven, and it has through its track record, that they have very dangerous policies in place. And those dangerous policies need to be disguised through disinformation. That's the thing. So the another larger context for journalists is that we are swimming in a sea of disinformation, controlled by this government.
Yeah. Ami, ayan, Ami is back. Tatanungin ko na, Ami, hi, Ams, are you there?
Yes. Yes, Ariel.
Okay, ito, perspective ng isang editor ng isang community newspaper or a regional newspaper, as we call it sa PPI. How do you train your journalists, your reporters, especially yung young ones na doon tinapon sa isang beat, tapos in-expect mo na train mo na, tapos in terms of lahat, yung skills ba? Lahat ng skills. Paano yun? May pagkakaiba ba sa national sa local?
We have different... Yeah, I think because usually that's geographical beats of City Hall, but we try to make it different. No, we try to talk about for City Hall and City Council. We talk about governance, transparency, and governance. So that's the news agenda. And for the city, say City Hall, what's this? Courts. It's not just it's a justice beat. So it's not only really the courts, but also other courts in other agencies. Then we have someone writing about business, but it's not only the big business corporations and everything. It's also about the ordinary people in Bagkerohan market or other small medium enterprises. So I think that's what's different slightly, because since we are a community and we usually just know the people in our community, and we're very, very, we can easily talk to them, call them, whatever. So then we also, when the reporters come in at, let's say, 2:00, we still have time to really talk about what's going on. So even in the morning, we have the news budget. We already know what's going to happen. And in the afternoon, when they come in, we still have time to talk about the stories that coming out. So I think that helps. And then, of course, there's continuous training of our journalists through exposures, through trainings conducted by the Philippine Press Institute and the Mindanao Institute of Journalism. So, and then because we have other concerns such as conflicts, disasters, we cover issues like this, not just political, not just the government. So we do have a lot of issues that we cover. So let's say environment, post-disaster, post-conflict, and all these things.
Kaya
So
making
that's
a local journalist more multifaceted, ano?
Yeah, I think so, because we're so attuned to what's happening in our locality. That's why I would like to go back and concur with the rest, no, when I say that for the community pantry, we see it is very important in our community, such that we don't carry the story from Manila that says red tagging of, because we feel that this is a more important story, that individuals, private organizations are helping each other, and that's good, no? Because not all of those who are helping in the pantry are rich, and these are normal, ordinary people
Struggling
trying
din.
and that's the beauty, and that's the story, I think.
Meron bang instances na sa isang virtual presser or virtual pressers na andun yung reporter mo o reporters mo tapos nagtanong, after that ni-reprimand mo kasi mali ang tanong, or hindi ganun yung in-expect mo na klase ng pagtatanong?
We had an experience like that, no, but it was very difficult kasi ang reporter asked a question and it was kind of a little bit tactless, and she was really devastated after that. No, she was a very young reporter then, but she learned her lesson, and but we were also very compassionate to our reporters, and even, so I can't really say that I scolded her, but the experience enough really helped her become a very good reporter, and she became a very good reporter. Yeah.
Joyce, we still have thanks, Ami. We still have 28 minutes to be exact. Joyce? Oo. Thanks, Ami.
Yes, Ariel.
Yeah. Meron pang mga tanong from
may comment dito si Miss Ellen Tordesillas, and I really like it.
Yeah.
She said, truth should be the main narrative driver. Media should stick to that. If the government narrative is truthful, no problem with that. If it's otherwise, it is media's role to debunk government's narrative.
Exactly. Yeah.
Diba? At ako tingin ko, kung lalaliman pa natin yung discussion, papasok pa dyan actually yung media ownership. Bakit ganito mag-frame ang media? Kasi ganito ang landscape natin. Pero maybe that's for another webinar. Baka sumabog na yung discussion natin kung isama pa natin ang media ownership today.
Which is part of what we're talking, should be part of what we're talking about. Joyce, I don't know if you noticed this question from Alex Primo III. Should I ask this?
Go.
He asked, if the priority is not to let the government control the narrative, then why did the Malacanang Press Corps allow the screening of questions prior to every press briefing by Malacanang? Should they have that?
Yeah, I will comment on that. Please.
Should they have that banded together and said no to the protocol? You're part of. You were once president of Malacanang Press Corps. Yes.
So i-clarify lang natin, hindi ini-screen yung questions. At least nung pre-pandemic, sa ganung setup na face-to-face. Kung press con ng spokesperson, pag press con ng presidente, that's when they ask you, ano yung topic mo? Para lang prepared yung presidente to answer in case merong detalye na kailangan. Para hindi naman siya bangapa kung kailangan niyang iutos pa, halimbawa sa DPWH, kunin yung update sa ganitong report, etc. etc. Kadalasan yun sa presidential press briefing lang. But briefing ng spokesperson, briefing ng executive secretary, walang pre-screening of questions. Ngayon, naiiba ang situation because of Zoom. Diba sometimes, kasi minsan they don't call you They ask you, send in your questions, and then the moderator will be the one to ask the question. Like what's happening now sa atin ngayon? We're not exactly calling whoever ang nagtatanong, but we're reading from our chat because it's more efficient that way. So hindi ko alam kung sinadya yun o... But again, we acknowledge na dahil ganun yung setup, maraming tanong na baka pwedeng hindi na itanong or hindi tinanong deliberately. May mga ganung implikasyon siya.
Yeah. I don't know if who wants to answer the question. This is from Alden Monzon. Still on the frame, each of the frame yung question. Pero medyo tinatch siya yung topic on the anti-drug campaign. So he asked, on the issue of framing questions properly, is it ethical for journalists to ask yes, no, confirmatory questions about the guilt or innocence of suspects killed under the government's anti-drug campaign?
That's for the courts to decide yung guilt or innocence. Of course, other journalists may have a different take on it. Kaya nga sa news writing, careful tayo na ginagamit natin yung salitang suspect. Kaya lang yung ilang pertinent facts of the case, yun, there's a thin line between sub judice and the public's right to know. Halimbawa, kung titingnan nyo sa Ampatuan Massacre, the media had all the right to provide certain specific information related to the guilt or innocence of the Ampatuan clan. So kasi it's a matter of public interest. Kaya lang sometimes we also have to be worried about yung mga specific crimes of private people na hindi naman high profile. So sometimes a little more latitude should be given to them. Kaya lang in terms of asking, kung yung tanong is specific na kayo po ba talaga ang pumatay sa tao ito, halimbawa lang, I think regardless of whether or not high profile o low profile yung tao, that shouldn't be asked kasi the guilt or innocence is for the courts to decide. Yun lang po.
Ayun, Joyce, magandang training yung uli, Kailangan balikan na natin yung seminar workshop on media laws. Prof. Danny, di ba? Ang tagal-tagal na yun. Ilang taon na yung Kaloy? Yung last time nagkaroon na mga training on media laws, wala na. Nakakalimutan na ang daming mga, well na.
1990s.
Hindi naman lahat, pero ang dami talaga. Ayun, Joyce.
Ariel, sorry,
Yes, Prof. Dan, go.
No, si Mogs na lang. I'll give the floor.
Sige, money.
Kasi kung kini-question natin si Tina dun sa pagtanong kay Patring, tingin ko sa war on drugs, talagang ang laki ng problema ng mga journalist. Kasi minsan umiiyak yung namatayan, tatanungin mo, adik ba anak mo? Ba't yung pinatay? Adik ba siya?
Ito yan.
Napaka-insensitive minsan ng media,
O it's the same thing kung may trahedya and then you'd ask pa, anong nararamdaman mo? Ganito na yung tubig.
Namamatay na yung tao.
Oo. So dapat may distance ng konti, Bigyan natin sila ng chance na mag-grieve.
And i-qualify natin, hindi lang siya usaping legal, at usaping ethical din talaga ito. I-ano natin na, bagamat sometimes what is legal is not ethical and what is ethical is not exactly legal, meron tayong mga universal principles na dapat i-uphold, kabilang doon ng do no harm. Diba? Kung nakita mo ng...
Nasa code of ethics natin. Nasa code of ethics ng journalist, diba? Oo. Yun. Meron ka pang mga tanong dan Joyce from our audience?
Pwede magtanong lang kay Joyce, mabilis lang. Tungkol
my God, Danny, bakit? I've been such a good student.
I know, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Pero kung matatandaan natin, kasi may nabanggit ka tungkol dun sa kalakaran sa press con sa Malacanang. Kasi way back in March or April 2020, naglabas ng directive yung Malacanang na bawal na yung physical presence sa Malacanang briefing room. And up to now, sa pagkakaalam ko, bawal pa rin yata, di ba? Please correct me if I'm wrong. Meron bang moves yung any of the reporters ng Malacanang or yung Malacanang press corps mismo na i-demand na yung physical presence sa loob? Kasi ako, I'll be very frank, I'm sorry to say this, yung mga ganitong klaseng Zoom discussions, this is very, very terrible and this is very, very untenable. So yung mga press ko ni Harry Roque, you don't get to ask the hard questions.
I agree.
So baka I would just like to get some inside information kung may efforts pa kayo na magkaroon na ng, yun na nga, yung physical questioning, physical presence sa loob ng briefing room and ano yung reaction ng Malacanang tungkol dito. Sorry for the question.
It's okay. I-qualify ko lang, sir. Hindi na po ako member ng Malacanang press corps. Oo. Kasi nag-join na po ako sa desk. Pero ang understanding ko, parang yung reporters din, nahirapan din kasi baka they'd be required din na mag-swab every time papasok sa Malacanang. So isa rin yun sa consideration because of the pandemic. So ngayon, parang they're just dealing with it na via Zoom na lang talaga yung press briefings muna. Of course, the more enterprising would pursue Harry Roque and outside the Zoom press con. Pero at tingin ko, Sir Danny, isa yun sa consideration, yung kailangan kasi kung papasok ka sa Malacanang, magsaswab ka din.
Ariel, Joyce?
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sir John.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the question about the practice of asking yes or no questions. I'm just worried that some of our listeners will come away thinking that you shouldn't ask yes or no questions. Actually, these are not hard and fast rules. They are rules of thumb. No? In fact, Professor Danny already said this earlier. No? It should be a mix of closed and open-ended questions. No? It also depends on the journalistic output. No? So, for instance, I had a chance to interview on different occasions confessed assassins, no? Edgar Matobato and Arthur Las Cañas. And of course, I had to ask them. Of course, this was it was not a live press conference. No, it was an confidential meeting and so on. Of course, I had to ask: it's not only that did you actually kill a person? Did you see the president, the mayor at the time, kill a person? No, that should be answered by yes or no. But I think the point is you don't stop there. No, so I'm just worried that. We'll come away thinking, oh, don't ask yes or no. Parang it's bad.
True.
Don't ask
I have to concur with John on that one.
Yeah.
So also the feeling that you shouldn't ask hypothetical questions. If I were a PR practitioner, I would advise my clients not to answer hypothetical questions.
Not to answer.
But if I'm a journalist, I should certainly ask hypothetical questions. Again, it's not, if you're doing spot news, that's different. If you're doing a feature story, a longer feature story, it gets you into the reasoning, into the mind of your subject, right? So it depends. These rules should be understood as rules of thumb, no? Not hard and fast rules.
Also, if I may add, John, I mean, answering a yes and no question, I think that works if you've done a ton of work on what you're trying to report. For instance, 60 minutes type of shows where you basically, it's interrogating the person in front of you after you've done a lot of work investigating what the issue is about. So you ask him, did you actually rape this woman?
Yes, that's right. No? So for instance, so I like Kaloy's point. You should have done the research, as Danny says. No? You should have done the preparatory work. So for instance, you've already asked others, no? And then you talk to an official who was resigned from government. So you ask him, did you write your resignation statement? Sabi niyo, ako sumulat nun. Sir, sabi ni Asik, siya daw, maingat din, di ba? Or did you talk to the president when you said goodbye? Did you say goodbye? Yes. But the president, may na siya, di ba? So even those yes or no questions can have some utility depending on the context.
Yeah. Mabuti binanggit mo, Sir John. Meron pa isang tanong related to that. Masama ba pag inulit mo yung question ng kasamahan mong journalist?
Uy, magandang point yun, no? Because in fact, one of the main points of criticism dun sa press conference with Patring noon, no? But I think that, actually this goes back to an earlier point that I tried to raise, no? I think that press conferences are repetitive by nature, no? Sometimes you don't all come in at the same time. It doesn't mean that just because another outlet has asked a question, you cannot ask it yourself. It's also a way of verifying. No, maybe even if you were there at the start, maybe the way he answers your second question will be a little bit different from the way he first answered it, right? But the point I raised earlier was that people now following us on social media or on TV, seeing these televised or broadcast or recorded press conferences, will actually see it as a show. Okay? I think that's the reality. We are not prepared to be actors in a show. No, so we need to retool ourselves and see, that there is a performance aspect, unfortunately, to publicizing these question and answer forums. No? So if it were a show, syempre maiinis ka. Tinanong na yan bakit mo tatanungin ulit? But those reporters are asking from different perspectives. They might have different angles in mind, no? So, yun. So, medyo kailangan i-explain din. Ang problema natin was that there are a lot of reporters, of journalists who reacted negatively no, nung inatake tayo because of Tina's question. No, parang there was a lot of defensiveness eh. So
Pero
din yung iba.
But on the other hand, should we thank Tina for asking the question? Kasi otherwise, other jury would have not asked it in the first place about red tagging, if about red tagging at all.
No, I think that somebody did ask that question. It was also raised in Patring Non's statement released before the press conference. But again, even though it's already in the statement, doesn't mean we shouldn't ask, right? We should probe. We should probe.
Also, I think another context here that I don't know if this was true in Tina's case. I mean, TV, you really are under pressure to get short, pithy sound bites.
Succinct sound bites.
And that's a huge pressure. And sometimes you can only get that by asking questions that are to the point that maybe are too maybe are offensive to a lot of people, but to you, because now you want to elicit an answer that's good for TV, you sorted it. So I'm not saying this is what happened in Tina's case, but I think that's also important to keep in mind.
Joyce, we have a few minutes more before we wrap up the program. I'm pretty sure we've exhausted already a lot of things about yung questions and even journalism itself. Pero ito na yung last natin. We have 10 minutes more para mag-close na ito. Let's talk about accountability, because it's one of the purpose also of this forum or roundtable discussion is really talked about our accountability as media practitioners, as journalists. Yun na yun. Uunahin ko na lang muna last si Rides na, tapos yun na yung last words, your final words for the program as we say goodbye to our viewers and audience. Si Rides, bilang isang journalist na matagal na nakababad sa field reporting at kung ano nang pinagdaanan mo, ano yung accountability mo as a journalist sa ganitong panahon na you're being criticized or you're being given the opportunity to look at your profession, the way you conduct your own journalism, if I must say?
Yeah. Our accountability is to report the truth. Our biases is only for the truth. Lagi nating tatandaan as journalist na to become accountable sa ating ginagawang balita sa publiko. Kasi yun ang basis natin bilang isang mamamahayag. In a contemporary world, ang natin dito, ako as a journalist, lagi ako naniniwala na truth telling, through reporting yung two sides of the coins. Journalism is so symbiotic, and the essence nung the role ng journalism and yung media is very vital, lalo ngayon na sa critical tayong situation because of pandemic. The landscape truly transformed. Andyan yung publiko na kamasid sa atin as media men. So the more na maging critical tayo sa accountability natin sa tao.
Thanks, Rides Bacha, for joining us today. Let's go to Ami, accountability. Keep safe, Rides. Keep safe. Ami.
Yeah, on accountability, that's I think one of the top things that you should do as a journalist, that you should really be accountable. Otherwise, what's your point of continuing to be a journalist, right? So I think that's really very important that we are able to tell people what we're doing and why we're doing this. And if we do make mistakes, then let's accept that we sometimes in our zeal of reporting what we think is good and for the people, then I think we should also do that. So is this going to be the last? I'd like to say something. A takeaway, at least, no?
Takeaway, sure.
Takeaway from this session is 2 hour and 30-minute session. The first is that for those, especially for those students listening right now, is because as reporters, always when we go to a press conference or even Zoom, we already have a story running in our minds, and sometimes we fall into the trap of just filling in the blanks and getting the what you want quoted from our resource person. I think we should really think about it more clearly, and then that we should be more mindful of the questions that we pose, and see if where, of course, to ensure that we don't do harm. No? And I think that's a very important ethical value.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ami, for your time. And let's go to Manny Mogato. Manny, on accountability.
Alam mo, napakahalagang yung accountability sa ating trabaho, no? Kasi hindi lang to responsibilidad ng bawat journalist. Kasi iniisip natin, ano ba yung public good, ano ba yung public interest, ano ba ang epekto nito. So dapat maingat tayo, hindi basta-basta nagbabalita base sa chismis, laging base sa facts, no? So dapat accurate tayo. Kung nagkamali, aminin, di ba? Kasi doon lamang makita yung pagiging responsibilidad ng ating na tayo sa ating trabaho, no? Kaya mahalaga ang role ng journalist sa isang demokrasya, no? So dapat nating isupuso na hindi natin ginagawa to para sa sarili natin o para to sa bayan. So para protektahan ang demokrasya. So yun lang po.
Thanks, Manny, for joining us today. It's really wonderful to see you again. Sir John Nery, accountability and disinformation.
Thank you, Ariel and Joyce, and thank you to my fellow panelists. Especially thank you to the participants. I think that it's always a good time to hold journalists to account. It's always a good time for journalists to learn how to be accountable. But I have to say that we are going through a particular time where not all of us are ready for the kind of accountability that sometimes can be imposed on us. For instance, marami nga sa atin defensive nung April 20 nung nangyari itong press conference. For understandable reasons. Something is changing in the way we practice journalism. Social media is changing not only the way we reach audiences, but also the way we practice journalism. And sometimes we're not yet ready to accept that those changes. At the same time, we're going through the worst health emergency in 100 years. And we're not doing so well under this government. So ang daming nangyayari. No? Some of us are not ready to talk about issues of accountability because we are still running after this government, trying to hold it to account. Tapos biglang, to quote Bea Alonso in the Four Sisters
and a wedding. Oh.
Kasalanan ko, parang ganun ang pakiramdam ng mga journalists, di ba? No, parang kinahapon web tagging, no? We're trying to do our best, tapos biglang nakaturo sa amin yung ano. And then, of course, it's chastening, it's bracing, but it's also necessary. But I have to say, that's part of the reason why we're defensive. Parang, kami ba yung may kasalanan? Of course, the answer is yes, too, no? Pero ganun yung situation, no? So, yun, we need forums like this. We need to talk to each other. And just a quick answer to Michael Santos's question: we really do need support groups. It's great if our support groups include our managers, but we need support groups among fellow journalists. Sometimes
yes.
Importante talaga yun, no? Maglabas lang ng samaan loob, that's already a big thing. It will also help us account for our work.
I think it also helps, Sir John, to belong to a media organization like NUJP, for newspaper, for example, the PPI, CMFR, PCIJ. I mean, mga support groups din yun na pag-uusapan natin ng madalas, di ba? Oo. Sir Danny pala. Sir Danny, accountability. Oh. Ano yung lessons? Ito si Sir Danny dito, professor journalist, media critic din to eh.
Well, the parameters for accountability should be based on the 5 principles of journalism. According to Edmund Lambert, these are truth-telling, justice, humaneness, stewardship, and freedom. And of course, when you want to be accountable, we keep in mind the mission of the journalist, which is to help in the shaping of public opinion by providing only the relevant information. So the key word here is relevant. Now, interpreting the normative standards of journalism from a more progressive perspective, we take to heart the fact that journalism is all about giving a voice to the voiceless. And of course, speaking truth to power as well. So the adversarial role of journalism has been inherent. And this is not just the handiwork of activists or suspected communists. Even the works of Weaver, McQuail, and other, Western scholars with no politics whatsoever would tend to use the word adversarial to discuss the role, the confrontational role of journalism even. So with that, we also should not be just imprisoned by the theoretical standards of to inform and to educate. Because the third part of the mission of media should always be kept in mind, and that is journalists should work to act as agents for social change. Again, this is not a leftist purview. These are time-tested theories on journalism, and given the context that we're going through right now, we need a lot of progressive thinking insofar as journalism is concerned. So forgive me if journalism becomes equated with activism at this point in our history. Maraming salamat po.
Thanks, Prof. Dan and Sir John Nery for joining us today. Last but not least is Kaloy Conde. Babaguin ko ng konti. Kaloy.
Manny also.
Ay, Manny pa muna.
Yeah.
Si Manny muna bago si Kaloy.
Yeah.
Last na si Kaloy. Oo. Eh, tapos na si Manny. Si Kaloy na.
Okay. Sorry.
Ito na nga. Kaya nga sabi ko last but not least, Kaloy, babaguin ko ng konti. Journalism and human rights. Binanggit na kanina ni Prof. Dan na hindi pwedeng i-equate ang journalism sa activism nowadays. So your take on journalism and human rights.
Well, yeah, I mean it's obviously lalo na sa konteksto natin dito sa Pilipinas, with all the drug war, with all of these human rights violations, the killing, sexual judicial killing, red tagging, the role of journalists is very, very important. They are helping society to improve the human rights condition, the situation in the Philippines. And in fact, from my perspective now as a human rights advocate, we look at journalists as key partners in documenting, in monitoring, in documenting human rights abuses, in whatever form they take. And so very, very crucial. And I think it's crucial now for journalists to really embrace human rights in itself. Hindi siya kontra, hindi siya politika, hindi siya kontra sa ginagawa mo. What you're doing actually, yung complementary kayo eh. I mean, as a journalist, if you're a true journalist, will write about social justice issues, will write about social issues, and inevitably this will nag-mimic ito, nag-synergize ito with the whole idea of human rights. So it is important. We, as journalists, we want to improve society the same way with human rights work. And in fact, just a last point on accountability, and I would like to end on this one. It's very important right now for journalists in the Philippines to also embrace accountability. At siguro simulan ito dun sa idea na huwag kayong magalit pag kinikriticize kayo ng CMFR, ng PJR. Ako, member ako ng board of advisors dati ng PJR, and we get complaints a lot. Oh, ito na naman sila. Conde, ito na naman. In the days, nagmamagaling na naman kung mga pinagsasabi about the work that we do. Hindi nakakatulong yung ganyang mentality. I mean, media critics, we're not here to make your life miserable as journalists. We're trying to make the industry, to improve the industry and to make the craft of journalism better in terms of practicing. Yun lang naman yun eh.
Thanks, Kaloy, for your wonderful, insightful sharing. Back to you, Joyce.
And I think we've had a very productive afternoon. Napakaganda ng mga inputs ng ating panelists. Sa hanay ko naman, tingin ko kailangan alalahanin lang natin na we should always be humble. We should be humble enough to admit kung tayo ay nagkakamali, humble enough to accept criticisms. Diba? Sa dyaryo nga may kasabihan tayo, you're only as good as your last byline.
Correct.
So kahit pag gano'ng kakahusay, kung nagkamali ka, aminin mo na ikaw ay nagkamali at then move forward. Improve on your craft. Hindi naman tayo we should not stagnate. Hindi porket magaling ka na ngayon ay hihinto ka na doon. At maganda yung ganitong usapan, really.
Yeah.
Truly, maganda yung ganitong usapan. Mas maganda if we have beer, but we may do. Kung wala, okay lang din.
Next time, as Joyce said, hope to have another productive and provocative engagement with our audience next time, hopefully. Thanks everyone for finding time to be with us today. See you in the future. Quick reminder, if you guys want to review the entire proceedings, the PPA has a YouTube channel. I-upload po ni Kirion the whole proceedings or the whole program sa YouTube channel ng PPI. Thanks everyone to our panelists, to Joyce, of course, to Nickel Asia Corporation, to our teachers, educators, MIL teachers, our students. Sino pa ba? General public. Thanks everyone.
Yes.
Please magpo-post kami ng announcement sa PPI page group sa mga future activities namin sa Philippine Press Institute. Maraming salamat po. Be well, keep safe, and let's pray for our country, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Salamat po.
Laris, ng Laris.
Mahalaga talaga ang pag-attend ng flag ceremony sapagkat ito ang magsisilbing tagapagmulat sa isang tao bilang Pilipino na hindi madali na makamtan natin yung ating kalayaan as simbolo ng ating bandila.
Ang islap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nasirising. Ang bituin at araw na kailan pang may di masidilim. Lupa ng
Sa sobrang dami po ng estudyante, hindi po lahat nakakover sa area po kasi maliit lang po yung space namin before.
aming ligaya na pag may mga api ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Ang pagiging isang mabuting anak ay natututunan natin sa ating tahanan. At ang ating pagiging isang mabuting mamamayang Pilipino ay nag-uugat sa ating mga paaralan. 2 buwan makalipas ang school turnover sa DepEd ng Taganito National High School, ating kamustahin ang lagay ng mga beneficiaries ng paaralan, ang mismong mga mag-aaral nito.
Ngayon po, mas maliwalas po siya tapos mas plaster siya diri sa compared lagi sa una.
Masarap na po mag-aral sa bago naming classrooms ngayon dahil nga po sa isang silid-aralan po ay hindi na po kami gaano nagsisiksikan. At saka po kompleto na po lahat ng mga gamit sa aming paaralan. Kagaya na lamang po sa mga reportings, meron na po kaming mga projectors, mga teachers po nagpapagamit na po ng laptops at saka sabi niya po na yung mainit, hindi na po kasi mainit kasi nga gaya ngayon sa isang silid-aralan, less 40 students na lang po yung pasok doon. So, hindi na po siya gaanong crowded. So, nasa estudyante na lang po yan kung paano nila pinapahalagahan ang mga gamit na binibigay sa amin po.
mas ngayon kasi hindi na nagkokopyahan dahil ang lawak na, tapos pag mag-i-exam talagang malaki na ang space.
Epektibo po yung pagtuturo ngayon ng mga teacher sapagkat noon ang paaralan namin ay blackboard lang yung nagpagitan ng ibang mga estudyante. Kaya rinig na rinig namin yung klase ng ibang section or ibang classroom. So hindi kami makapag-focus.
Hindi na masyadong nakaka-high blood yung mga guro na magtuturo sa amin kasi hindi na masyadong maingay kasi sapagkat maluwag na at saka may kanya-kanya na kaming silid-aralan dito sa school.
Education is the only thing that we have that nobody can take away from us. Kaya naman mga proyekto sa edukasyon ang mga pangunahing prioridad sa corporate social responsibility ng Nickel Asia Corporation bilang halimbawa na responsableng pagmimina. Dahil sa mga paaralan na uhubog ang mga pag-iisip ng mga pag-asa ng ating bayan, ang kabataang Pilipino.
Salamat ka, Radyo, sa bago namong isilahan, TH Follow Taganito Mining Corporation.
Ang unang kinatatakot namin para sa mga anak ko ay yung paano ko sila bubuhayin, paano ko ulit sila mapapag-aral, mabibigyan ng magandang kinabukasan sa buhay nila. Para sa akin, ang isang responsible mining is yung talaga sila yung tumitingin sa anong pangangailangan ng komunidad. Ginagampanan nila anong nasa ayon sa batas na kailangan nilang gawin. At yun talaga yung una, yung social services na ibinabahagi nila at ipinamimigay sa mga tao sa community.
Thank you.